When refusing to steal costs you everything, except your soul. One word. That's all it took to shatter Lena Carter's invisible life. Standing in a restaurant hallway with her manager's hand crushing her wrist, she'd just called a fraudulent charge what it was. Theft. Now the cameras couldn't see her. No witnesses. Just a desperate woman and a man who'd already decided she was disposable. She had 15 seconds before he dragged her somewhere darker. What she didn't know? A shadow in an expensive suit had been watching her for months, and her quiet war was about to become his. Stay with me until the end. Like this video, and comment your city so I can see how far this story travels. The rain hadn't stopped for 3 days. Lena Carter stood at the staff entrance of the Sterling Room, watching water cascade off the burgundy awning in sheets that caught the streetlights like falling glass. Her sneakers were still wet from the morning shift. The cheap canvas never dried anymore, just went from soaked to damp to soaked again, leaving dark footprints on the marble floors that Dominic always noticed. Dominic Hayes, her manager. The man who smiled at customers with teeth so white they looked porcelain, who remembered birthdays and wine preferences and made every regular feel like the only person in the room. The man who'd altered Table 12's bill 3 times this week, inflating wine charges and adding phantom appetizers while the kitchen staff looked away. The man who thought she was too timid to matter. She pushed through the service door at 5:47 p.m., 13 minutes early for the dinner shift. The back hallway smelled like steam and lemon polish, sounds from the kitchen already building, the clatter of pans, the hiss of something searing, Miguel's voice calling for more time. She hung her rain jacket on the bent hook that nobody else used, pulled her hair back with the elastic she kept around her wrist, and checked her apron pocket. The notebook was still there, small, spiral-bound, college-ruled. 73 pages of dates, table numbers, original totals, and altered amounts. Written in her cramped, careful handwriting during bathroom breaks and smoke breaks, she didn't take. Evidence she'd never intended to gather, that had started as simple confusion 3 months ago when the numbers on her checkout sheet hadn't matched what she'd entered. Why does Table 7 show $340 when I rang up $280? She'd asked Dominic that first time. He'd laughed, easy, dismissive, and said the system auto-applied a service charge for parties over 6. She'd nodded, smiled, went home and couldn't sleep because Table 7 had been a couple. 2 people. The service charge didn't make sense, so she'd started writing things down. Now, 73 pages later, the pattern was undeniable. Table 12 every Wednesday, Table 7 every other Friday. The corner booth on Saturday nights, always high bills. Always regulars Dominic personally managed. Always alterations that appeared after the customers left. Charges they'd never see until their credit card statements arrived weeks later, small enough to ignore, frequent enough to add up. Carter, you're early. She turned. Dominic stood in the hallway, phone in one hand, that perfect smile already in place. He wore black tonight, tailored slacks, crisp shirt, silver cufflinks that caught the overhead light. 42 years old, divorced twice, drove a car that cost more than she'd earn in 5 years. She'd looked him up once, curious about the gap between his salary and his lifestyle. The curiosity had felt dangerous even then. Traffic was light, she said. Good. Table 12 requested you specifically. Mr. Brennan appreciates consistency. His eyes flicked to her apron pocket, lingered for half a second, then returned to her face. You look tired. Everything okay? The question felt like a test. I'm fine. Good. He glanced at his phone, frowned at something on the screen. We're expecting a full house tonight. Senator Voss is bringing a party of 8, and the Kincaid group has the private room. I need you sharp. I'm always sharp. Something flickered across his expression, surprise, maybe, at the edge in her voice. She never had an edge. She was the quiet one, the one who smiled and nodded and never complained about the broken tip-sharing system or the way he scheduled her for every holiday or the fact that she'd requested one Sunday off in 6 months and been denied because we can't afford gaps in coverage. He recovered quickly. Of course you are. That's why Table 12 asks for you. He stepped closer, and she smelled his cologne, something expensive and woody that probably had a French name. You make them comfortable. They trust you. They trust me to be invisible, she thought. To smile and pour wine and never question why their bill doesn't match what they ordered. I should get ready for shift, she said. Absolutely. He stepped aside, but his gaze followed her as she walked toward the service station, She could feel it on her shoulders, her back, assessing something he'd missed before. The Sterling Room occupied the ground floor of a historic building in the city's financial district. All exposed brick and brass fixtures and tables set with white linens that cost more to clean than most restaurants spent on food. Michelin hadn't given them a star yet, but the whispers said they were close. The clientele certainly behaved like it. Tech executives, lawyers, old money in new suits, politicians who needed somewhere elegant and discreet. Lena had been invisible here for 18 months. Perfect grades in community college hadn't translated into scholarships. Her mother's medical bills had translated into debt. Her brother Danny's autism therapy wasn't covered by insurance, and their father had translated into absence 7 years ago. So she'd dropped out, taken the first job that offered health benefits, and learned to carry expensive plates without trembling. Being invisible had advantages. Nobody noticed when you watched. Nobody questioned when you wrote things down during your break. Nobody suspected you understood the numbers better than they did, that you'd been studying accounting before the world had rearranged your priorities. Lena? Maria waved from the service station, already in her uniform, black curls pinned back in a style that somehow looked effortless. Thank God you're here. Dominic's been on edge all day. Something's happening tonight. What do you mean? Maria glanced toward the hallway where Dominic had disappeared, then lowered her voice. Big reservation came in this morning, last minute. Some guy named D'Angelo. Reserved the entire back section, private service, specific wine list. Dominic's been sweating over it for hours. Who is he? No idea. But Dominic took the call himself, and I heard him say yes, sir, about 40 times. Whoever D'Angelo is, he makes Dominic nervous. Lena filed the name away. What time? 8 o'clock. You're not assigned to that section, though. Dominic's handling it personally. Maria's expression shifted, sympathy replacing curiosity. How's Danny? Good. He made a castle out of Lego yesterday. Showed me every single brick placement. That's amazing. Maria squeezed her hand. You're a good sister. The compliment sat uncomfortably. Good sisters didn't work at restaurants where managers committed fraud. Good sisters didn't collect evidence they were too afraid to use. Good sisters didn't lie awake at night calculating how many months of Danny's therapy they could afford if they lost this job. Table assignments are up, Maria said, nodding toward the board. Lena checked. Table 7, 12, and 15. The usual rotation. Table 12, Mr. Brennan, would arrive at 6:30, order the ribeye medium rare, ask about her day without listening to the answer, and leave exactly 20%. Nice enough. Forgettable enough. The kind of regular whose bill Dominic had been inflating for months. She took her position as the first customers trickled in. A couple celebrating an anniversary, a business dinner with forced laughter, 3 women who ordered the same salad and split one dessert. Lena smiled, poured water, recited specials she'd memorized, and let her mind split in 2, half present, half calculating. Table 7. Original total $340. Final bill $410. Difference $70. Table 12. Original total $520. Final bill $615. Difference $95. 3 months of data. 47 instances of alteration. Average inflation $73 per incident. Total estimated theft $3,431. She checked the math 17 times. At 6:32, Mr. Brennan arrived. Lena! He shook rain off his umbrella, handed it to the coat check with the same smooth motion he probably used in boardrooms. Late 50s, salt and pepper hair, wedding ring that looked newer than his watch. How's my favorite server? Doing well, Mr. Brennan. Your usual table? You know me too well. She led him to table 12, poured water, went through the ritual they'd established over months of Wednesday dinners. He ordered the ribeye. Medium rare. Mashed potatoes, not fries. House salad with the dressing on the side. A bottle of the Sangiovese. Expecting company? She asked, noting the wine. Just me tonight. Long day. I deserve it. She smiled, wrote it down, and headed to the kitchen. Miguel had the ribeye ready before she finished entering the order. He knew the rhythm too. Knew Wednesday meant table 12 meant Brennan, meant ribeye at exactly 6:45. You okay, chica? Miguel asked, plating with practiced precision. You look stressed. I'm fine. You're a terrible liar. But he let it drop, the way people did when they needed to survive their shifts without complications. She delivered the salad, poured the wine, watched Mr. Brennan eat methodically, phone in his left hand, fork in his right, scrolling through emails between bites. At 7:23, he finished. She cleared the plates, asked about dessert, declined, as always, and processed his check. Total, $340. She printed the receipt, placed it in the leather folder, and brought it to his table. He barely glanced at it, just set down a black credit card and returned to his phone. "I'll be right back with this," Lena said. She walked to the service station, card in hand, swiped it through the reader. The machine beeped. She glanced at the screen, waiting for the approval, and froze. The total on the screen read $415. Not $340. Not what she'd entered. Not what Mr. Brennan had ordered. Her heart kicked against her ribs. She looked at the receipt in the folder, $340. Looked at the screen, $415. Someone had altered it between the table and the terminal. Modified it in the system, the same way they'd done 47 times before, but this time she'd caught it in real time. Problem? She turned. Dominic stood 3 feet away, expression pleasant, curious, too casual. He'd been watching. "The total changed," she said carefully. "What do you mean?" She showed him the receipt. "I entered $340. The system shows $415. He leaned in, squinted at the screen with theatrical confusion. "Huh. That's strange. Probably just a glitch. Here." He reached for the terminal. "Wait." The word came out sharper than she'd intended. Dominic's hand stopped midair. Other servers glanced over, Maria, Tony, even Stephanie from the bar. The kitchen noise seemed suddenly distant. "Wait." Dominic's smile didn't change, but his eyes did. "Lena, we have customers. If there's a system error, I need to fix it." "It's not an error." The service station got quieter. "Excuse me?" His voice stayed pleasant, but the edge underneath cut. She should stop. She knew she should stop. This was the moment to smile, apologize, say she must have been confused, let him fix it the way he'd been fixing things for months. Keep her head down, protect Danny's therapy, keep the job. Instead, she opened her mouth and heard herself say, "You've been changing bills after customers leave, adding charges they didn't order. I've documented 47 instances over 3 months." The world stopped. Dominic stared at her. Maria's water pitcher hung suspended mid-pour. Someone in the kitchen dropped a pan, and the crash echoed. "That's a serious accusation," Dominic said quietly. All pretense of friendliness had evaporated. "Based on what exactly?" She should stop. She should absolutely stop. "Based on comparing the orders I enter to the final bills processed. Based on checking them every night. Based on this." She pulled the notebook from her apron pocket, held it up. 73 pages of careful documentation. Every date, every table, every altered charge. His gaze locked on the notebook like it was a weapon. "You've been spying." Not a question, an accusation. "I've been working." "You've been stealing." The word hung in the air between them. Stealing. Not inflating, not adjusting, not system errors. Theft. Crime. The thing you couldn't smile away or explain with corporate jargon. Something shifted in Dominic's posture. A decision being made, a calculation finishing. He glanced around the service station. Maria had backed toward the kitchen. Tony had vanished. Stephanie was pretending to organize liquor bottles. No customers could see this corner. The security camera was angled toward the front entrance, not here. They were alone in a crowd. "Come with me," Dominic said. "We'll discuss this in my office." "We can discuss it here." "Now, Lena." He moved toward her, hand reaching for her elbow. Authority in every line of his body. She'd seen him use this posture with difficult customers, with vendors who pushed back, with anyone who needed to be reminded who controlled the room. She stepped back. "Don't touch me. You're making a scene. You're committing fraud." His hand closed around her wrist. Not hard enough to bruise, but firm enough to pull. "My office. Now, or you're fired." She tried to twist away. His grip tightened. Around them, the restaurant continued. The careful choreography of service, the soft jazz playing through hidden speakers, the clink of silverware on porcelain. Nobody looked directly at them, but everyone was aware, watching peripherally, pretending not to notice. Dominic pulled her toward the hallway, the one that led past the bathrooms, past the storage room, to his office in the back, the one without cameras. Panic spiked through her chest. She'd been stupid, so incredibly stupid. Confronting him in public hadn't protected her. It had just given him an excuse to isolate her. Now she was being dragged toward a room where no one would hear, where he could spin whatever story he wanted, where her notebook and her documentation and her careful months of work would disappear. "Let go of me," she said, louder now. "Stop being dramatic." "I said let go." "Is there a problem?" The voice came from behind them. Male, calm, with an edge underneath like a blade in silk. Both Lena and Dominic turned. A man stood in the service station entrance. Expensive suit, not flashy, but the kind where you could tell the fabric cost more than furniture. Dark hair touched with gray at the temples. Maybe 45. Eyes that assessed the situation with the kind of cold precision she'd only seen in nature documentaries about predators. Dominic's grip on her wrist loosened. "Mr. D'Angelo, I didn't realize you'd arrived. Your table isn't quite ready." I asked if there was a problem. D'Angelo's gaze moved to Lena, to Dominic's hand still on her wrist, back to Dominic's face. "It appears there might be. Just a staff issue, nothing to concern yourself with." "I'm concerned." He said it the way you'd comment on the weather. Pleasant. Absolute. "You're about to drag a young woman down a hallway with no witnesses." "That concerns me." Dominic released Lena's wrist, smiled, became the man customers knew again, charming, apologetic, in control. "I assure you, it's just a misunderstanding. Lena made some accusations about our billing system, and I was taking her somewhere private to discuss it professionally." "What kind of accusations?" "With all respect, Mr. D'Angelo, this is an internal matter." "What kind?" Repeated exactly the same way. No louder. Somehow more commanding. Dominic's jaw tightened. "She claims there have been discrepancies in customer bills." "Have there been?" "Of course not." D'Angelo turned to Lena. "You have documentation?" Her hand was shaking. She realized she was still holding the notebook. "Yes." "May I see it?" Dominic stepped forward. "Sir, I really don't think I wasn't asking you." D'Angelo extended his hand toward Lena. "May I?" She looked at his face, at Dominic's face, at the empty hallway behind them and the restaurant full of people who'd watched her get dragged away without intervening, at Maria, who'd turned away, at the life she'd been clinging to, the job she'd needed, the invisibility that had kept her safe. She handed him the notebook. D'Angelo opened it, flipped through pages. His expression didn't change, not shock, not anger, not satisfaction, just focus, reading, absorbing. After what felt like an hour but was probably 90 seconds, he closed it and looked at Dominic. "This details systematic fraud," he said. 47 instances, over $3,000 in false charges. "That's absurd." She's clearly confused. Table 12. Tonight. You altered the bill from $340 to $415 between the time she entered the order and now. The customer's card is still at the register. D'Angelo glanced at the terminal. "Would you like to explain that, or should we let the police do it?" The blood drained from Dominic's face. There must be a system error." "There's no error." D'Angelo's voice dropped 20 degrees. "There's you, stealing from customers, probably funneling the money somewhere you thought was safe, using your position to run a long-term fraud scheme. The question now is how we handle it." "Who are you?" Dominic whispered. D'Angelo smiled. It wasn't friendly. "I'm Vincent D'Angelo. I own this restaurant. I own the building it's in. I own 4 other restaurants in this city, 2 hotels, and enough commercial real estate that your entire annual salary wouldn't cover my property taxes." He paused. "I also own you, Mr. Hayes, as of about 30 seconds ago." The hallway seemed to tilt. "The reservation," Lena heard herself say. "You weren't a customer. You came to watch." "I came to verify." Vincent's gaze moved to her. 3 weeks ago, someone sent an anonymous email to my corporate office. It claimed one of my managers was running a billing fraud scheme. It included dates, amounts, and table numbers. No name, no return address, just data. The email she'd sent at 2 a.m. from the library computer, terrified and desperate, and certain nothing would come of it. I don't typically act on anonymous tips, Vincent continued, but the numbers were specific, testable. So I had my auditing team pull 3 months of transaction records for the Sterling room. They found irregularities, not many, just enough to be suspicious. Someone was very careful, very methodical, and very stupid. Dominic had gone gray. I needed proof, Vincent said. So I made a reservation, positioned myself to observe, and waited to see what would happen. I expected to catch you altering a bill sometime tonight. He looked at Lena. I didn't expect one of my servers to confront you with a notebook full of evidence. She couldn't breathe properly. Everything felt unreal. The man who owned the restaurant she'd worked at for 18 months, standing in front of her. The manager who'd controlled her schedule, threatened her job, grabbed her wrist, looking like he might collapse. What happens now? She asked. Vincent closed the notebook, handed it back to her. Now you call the police and file a formal complaint. Now I suspend Mr. Hayes pending investigation. Now we audit every transaction he's touched in the last year and contact every customer who was overcharged. He turned to Dominic. Now you decide whether you want to make this easy or difficult. I can explain. I don't want explanations. I want your office keys, your building access card, and your silence. My lawyers will be in touch tomorrow. If you're smart, you'll get your own. Dominic looked at Lena. Something desperate flickered in his eyes. You have no idea what you've done. No idea who's involved in this. Is that a threat? Vincent asked quietly. It's the truth. You think this is just me? You think... He cut himself off, seemed to realize he was confessing. Forget it. Fire me. Ruin me. You'll regret it. I rarely regret eliminating problems. Vincent gestured toward the exit. Leave. Now. Through the back door. If you speak to any customers or staff on your way out, I'll have you arrested for trespassing in addition to fraud. For a moment, Lena thought Dominic might lunge at her. His hands clenched. His whole body vibrated with rage. But Vincent shifted slightly, just an inch, placing himself between them. And whatever violence Dominic had been considering evaporated. He turned and walked toward the back exit. Didn't run, didn't storm out, just walked, back straight, like he was leaving for a lunch break. The door closed behind him with a soft click. Silence filled the hallway. You're Lena Carter, Vincent said. Not a question. Yes. You've worked here 18 months. Associate degree in accounting from Metro Community College. One younger brother, Daniel. Mother passed away 2 years ago. You live in the Riverside Apartments, Unit 4C. You take the number 6 bus to work. You've never been late, never called in sick, never filed a complaint. He paused. You notice everything, document everything, and keep your head down. She stared at him. How do you know all that? Because when an anonymous email accuses one of my managers of fraud, I investigate everyone involved, including the person most likely to have sent it. He studied her face. You were afraid I wouldn't believe you. That's why you didn't sign it. I was afraid I'd lose my job. And instead you confronted your manager in public, with witnesses, knowing it could cost you everything. He tilted his head slightly. That was either very brave or very foolish. I didn't plan it. The charge changed while I was processing it, and he was right there, and I just... She trailed off. I called it theft. Out loud. After that, it was too late to back down. One word, Vincent said softly. That's all it takes sometimes. One word that makes everything real. Around them, the restaurant had returned to normal. Maria was taking orders. Stephanie was making drinks. Customers were eating. The machine kept running, indifferent to the fact that one of its gears had just been torn out. What happens to me? Lena asked. What do you want to happen? The question caught her off guard. I need this job. My brother has therapy bills, and the insurance here... You'll keep your job, Vincent interrupted, with a raise, effective immediately. You'll also be working directly with my auditing team for the next few weeks, helping us understand the full scope of the fraud. Why? Because you're the only person in this building who cared enough to document the truth. That's rare. He pulled a business card from his jacket pocket, handed it to her. My direct line. Call me tomorrow afternoon. We have a lot to discuss. She took the card. Heavy stock, embossed letters. Vincent D'Angelo, D'Angelo Enterprises. There's something else you should know, Vincent said. Hayes mentioned people being involved. He wasn't lying. This fraud scheme is bigger than one manager inflating bills. Someone's been feeding him instructions, using him to skim money while building a case against me. A case? For what? A hostile takeover. My company's been under pressure from a rival group for 6 months. They've been trying to find evidence of mismanagement, financial irregularities, anything they can use to push out my leadership team. Hayes' fraud makes it look like I run sloppy operations, that my restaurants aren't properly supervised. His expression hardened. They were manufacturing evidence. Your manager was just a tool. Lena's mind raced. The money he stole. Where was it going? That's what I need to find out. The inflated charges weren't padding his own pockets. The amounts were too small, too consistent. Someone was teaching him to build a pattern. Vincent glanced toward the dining room. Hayes panicked tonight because you disrupted the plan. Now he's running to whoever's been pulling his strings, which means I have maybe 12 hours before they adjust their strategy. What do you need me to do? He looked at her sharply. You've already done enough. No. She surprised herself with the certainty. I documented the theft. I can help you trace where it went. I have dates, amounts, customers. If someone's using this to build a case against you, my notebook has the evidence to prove it's fraud, not negligence. But Vincent was quiet for a long moment. This won't be safe. The people behind this don't appreciate disruption. Neither did Dominic. I disrupted him anyway. Something that might have been respect flickered across Vincent's face. Tomorrow, 2 o'clock. My office is on the 40th floor of the D'Angelo Tower. Bring your notebook and anything else you've collected. I'll be there. He nodded, started to turn away, then paused. Lena, what you did tonight, confronting Hayes, most people would have walked away, kept their heads down, survived. I tried that for 18 months. And then? Then I got tired of watching people steal and calling it business. She met his gaze. My mother used to say silence is just slow poison. You drink it every day thinking it's keeping you safe until one day you realize it's killing you. Vincent studied her face like he was memorizing it. Your mother was right. He turned and walked toward the dining room, disappearing into the elegant crowd as smoothly as he'd appeared. Lena stood in the hallway, heart still racing, notebook clutched against her chest. The shift wasn't over. Table 7 needed water. The anniversary couple wanted dessert. 15 other tasks demanded attention. But everything had changed. She'd been invisible for 18 months, and then she'd said one word, theft, and the invisibility had shattered. Now she stood in the center of something bigger than inflated bills and corrupt managers. Something that involved hostile takeovers and corporate warfare and money moving in patterns she'd documented without understanding their true purpose. She should be terrified. Part of her was, but another part, the part that had stayed up until 3 a.m. reviewing transaction records, that had sent an anonymous email from a library computer, that had kept a spiral notebook hidden in her apron for 3 months, felt something else entirely. Alive. For the first time since her mother died, since Danny's diagnosis, since college became impossible and survival became everything, she felt alive. She tucked the notebook back into her apron, smoothed down her uniform, and walked back into the dining room. Table 7 was waving for the check. She smiled, grabbed the leather folder, and moved through the familiar choreography. But she wasn't the same server who'd started the shift. She'd drawn a line, said the word, refused to be complicit. And on the other side of that line, she'd found someone who'd been watching, waiting, choosing. Someone who saw what she'd done and called it valuable instead of troublesome. Tomorrow at 2 o'clock, she'd walk into the D'Angelo Tower and help dismantle whatever conspiracy had tried to destroy a man who owned restaurants and buildings, and enough power to make managers disappear with a gesture. Tonight, she finished her shift. She served wine and cleared plates and smiled at customers who didn't know the woman bringing their dessert had just reshaped the architecture of her own life. At 10:47 p.m., she clocked out, walked through the rain to the bus stop, and rode home with the notebook pressed against her side like a secret. Danny was asleep when she got back to the apartment. Mrs. Chen from 4B had stayed late, bless her. Lena paid her the usual $20, made tea she didn't drink, and sat at the kitchen table staring at 73 pages of careful documentation. Evidence, weapon, lifeline. She didn't sleep much, kept replaying the moment when she'd pulled the notebook out, when she'd said the word, when Vincent D'Angelo had asked to see her evidence and Dominic's world had collapsed. Kept thinking about what Hayes had said. You have no idea who's involved in this. By sunrise, she'd made a decision. Whatever came next, investigation, conspiracy, corporate warfare, she wouldn't back down. She'd spent 18 months being invisible, watching theft, staying silent. She'd spent 2 years watching her mother die slowly, watching Danny struggle, watching the world demand survival and call it living. She was done surviving. At 1:45 p.m. the next day, Lena Carter walked into the D'Angelo Tower wearing the one professional outfit she owned, a gray suit from Target, scuffed but clean shoes, hair pulled back, with her notebook in a folder and certainty in her chest. The lobby was all glass and marble, 40 stories of power rising into the sky. The receptionist looked her over, noted the cheap suit, the nervous hands, and barely concealed a smirk. "I have an appointment with Mr. D'Angelo," Lena said. 2 o'clock. The smirk vanished. Name? Lena Carter. The receptionist checked her computer, and something shifted in her expression. 40th floor. He's expecting you. The elevator ride felt like ascending into another world. Soft music. Temperature-controlled air. A view of the city spreading out below as she rose higher and higher. At the 40th floor, the doors opened onto a hallway that screamed wealth without shouting, subtle art, perfect lighting, carpet so thick her footsteps disappeared. Vincent's office door was open. He sat behind a desk that probably cost more than her car, windows behind him showing the city from a height where problems looked manageable. He glanced up as she entered, gestured to a chair. "You came," he said. "I said I would." People say a lot of things. He closed the laptop in front of him. "Thank you for being someone who means them." She sat down, placed the folder on her lap. "What do you need from me?" "Everything you know, everything you've documented." And then he paused. "Then I need to know if you're willing to do something dangerous." Her pulse kicked up. "Like what?" "Like going back to work tomorrow, acting like nothing happened, letting Hayes believe he still has leverage." Vincent leaned forward. "He'll contact you, either directly or through someone else. He'll try to threaten you, bribe you, make you doubt what you saw. I need you to play along long enough for us to trace the connection back to whoever's orchestrating this. You want me to be bait. I want you to be a witness who's willing to walk back into the trap, but only if you choose it." His gaze was steady. "I can protect you. I have resources, lawyers, security, but I won't lie and say there's no risk." Lena thought about Danny, about therapy bills and rent, and the careful balance of survival she'd been maintaining. Thought about her mother's voice. Silence is slow poison. Thought about standing in that hallway, wrist caught in Dominic's grip, certain she was about to lose everything, until someone had stepped in and stopped it. "I'll do it," she said. Vincent nodded slowly. Then, "Let's begin." He opened her notebook and started asking questions. And Lena Carter, who had been invisible for 18 months, began to tell the truth. The conference room on the 40th floor held 3 other people when Lena finished walking Vincent through the notebook. A woman in her 50s with silver hair pulled into a severe bun, introduced only as Margaret, Vincent's head of legal. A younger man with glasses and the tired eyes of someone who lived in spreadsheets, Chen, the lead auditor. And a third person who'd arrived halfway through Lena's explanation, moving so quietly she hadn't noticed until he spoke. "The pattern confirms what we suspected," the man said. He was maybe 30, dressed casually in a way that somehow cost more than formal wear, laptop open in front of him showing screens Lena couldn't decipher. Hayes wasn't choosing these targets randomly. Someone fed him a list. "This is Daniel Park," Vincent said. "He handles digital forensics for my security team. Show her what you found." Daniel turned his laptop toward Lena. The screen displayed what looked like chat logs, short, clipped messages without names attached, just timestamps and text. Table 12. Wednesday. Inflate by $75. No more. Table 7. Friday. Add $60 to wine. Keep it subtle. Corner booth Saturday. They won't check. Make it $100. "Where did you get these?" Lena asked. "Hayes' personal phone." Daniel's fingers moved across the keyboard. When he left last night, he was rattled enough to forget basic security, kept his Bluetooth on. I was in the parking lot when he got to his car. Took me about 90 seconds to clone his device. Lena stared. That's legal? It's evidence, Margaret said crisply. Admissibility can be debated later. Right now, we need to understand the scope. Daniel pulled up another screen. The messages go back 14 months, always from the same number, a burner phone triangulated to different locations each time. Whoever's sending these instructions is careful. They never use names, never reference the larger plan, never leave anything that directly connects them. But they made a mistake, Chen said, pointing to something on the spreadsheet in front of him. The amounts Hayes was told to add, they're not random. Look at the pattern. He turned his laptop around. Columns of numbers, color-coded, with notations Lena recognized from her accounting classes. Revenue streams, profit margins, variance reports. These inflated charges create a specific kind of discrepancy, Chen continued. They make it look like the Sterling Room is hemorrhaging money through poor management. Revenue comes in, but the books don't balance properly. Inventory doesn't match sales. Customer complaints about overbilling start trickling in. Not enough to make headlines, but enough to suggest the operation is sloppy. Which makes my company look incompetent, Vincent said. Which gives shareholders grounds to question my leadership. Which opens the door for a hostile takeover bid. Lena's mind raced through the implications. But wouldn't an audit find the fraud immediately? It would, Margaret said, if they wanted it found. But I suspect the plan was to let it build for another few months, then have Hayes disappear, get fired for some unrelated cause, or quit suddenly. Once he's gone, the irregularities remain, but the trail goes cold. The narrative becomes, D'Angelo runs such chaotic operations that managers can embezzle for over a year without detection. That's insane, Lena said. You'd need coordinated effort across multiple levels. We have it. Daniel pulled up another file. Hayes wasn't the only one. We found similar patterns at 2 other D'Angelo properties. Different managers, same methodology. Small frauds that create big optics problems. The room went silent. Vincent stood and walked to the window, hands in his pockets, staring out at the city. When he spoke, his voice was quieter than before. 3 properties, 3 separate managers, all running identical schemes. That requires resources, planning, and access to internal operations data. He turned back to face them. Someone inside my organization is feeding information to whoever's orchestrating this. Do we have suspects? Margaret asked. 17 executives have access to multi-property operational data, Chen said. But only 5 have detailed financial access across all 3 locations where we've found irregularities. Daniel brought up photos, professional headshots that looked like they came from a corporate directory. 5 faces. 3 men. 2 women. All polished, successful. The kind of people who sign documents worth millions. Lena studied them, trying to reconcile these executives with the chain of events that had put Dominic Hayes' hand around her wrist. One of these people had orchestrated months of fraud, had used managers like disposable tools, had built a conspiracy designed to destroy Vincent's reputation and company. We need proof, Margaret said. Speculation won't hold up. Which is why we need Lena, Vincent said. Everyone looked at her. She kept her expression steady despite the spike of adrenaline. You said Hayes would contact me. He will, Daniel confirmed. Probably within 48 hours. He's desperate, cornered, and whoever's been controlling him will want damage control. They'll use him to find out what you know, what you've told us, whether you're a threat or a resource. What do you want me to say? Vincent returned to his seat, leaning forward with his elbows on the desk. That depends on what you're willing to do. Option 1. You cooperate fully with our investigation, but stay out of active field work. We protect you, keep you safe, use your documentation as evidence. It's a smart choice. And option 2? You go back to the Sterling Room tomorrow. Act scared. Act like you regret confronting Hayes, like you're worried about losing your job. When he contacts you, and he will, you tell him you didn't mean to cause trouble, that you just wanted to understand the billing errors, that you're willing to forget everything if he helps you keep your position. Lena's stomach tightened. You want me to make him think I'll back down. I want you to make him think you're reachable, convincible, someone who can be controlled or silenced. Vincent's gaze never wavered. If he believes that, He'll bring you into the conspiracy instead of eliminating you as a threat. He'll introduce you to whoever's pulling the strings. And that's when we get our proof. That's when she gets killed, Chen said bluntly. With respect, Mr. D'Angelo, asking a waitress to infiltrate a corporate conspiracy, I'm asking, not ordering, Vincent interrupted. And she's not just a waitress. She's someone who noticed a pattern that 17 executives missed. Someone who documented evidence under the nose of a corrupt manager for 3 months. Someone who confronted that manager in public despite having everything to lose.
Mom.
He looked at Lena. You're not trained for this. You're not equipped for this. And if you say no, I will respect that choice absolutely. The room waited. Lena thought about Danny, about the Lego castle he'd built brick by careful brick, about her mother in the hospital bed, voice barely a whisper. Don't let them make you small, baby. Don't shrink to fit their comfort. She'd been shrinking for 2 years, making herself small, manageable, invisible. And it had worked. She'd survived, paid bills, kept Danny safe. But survival wasn't living. It was just slow-motion drowning. If I do this, she said carefully, what protection do I have? Daniel spoke up. I can put a tracker on your phone that updates your location every 30 seconds. Audio recording capability that uploads to a secure server in real time. Panic button that alerts our security team immediately. I'll have lawyers on standby 24 hours a day, Margaret added. Any threat, any pressure, any indication of danger, we intervene. And I'll personally guarantee your safety, Vincent said. Which means if anything happens to you, the full weight of my resources comes down on whoever caused it, legal, financial, or otherwise. Lena looked at the 5 faces on the screen. One of them had built this trap, had used people like pawns, had treated fraud like a game, had assumed nobody would notice or care enough to fight back. How long would I have to maintain the act? She asked. Days, maybe a week, Vincent said. Hayes will move quickly. He's panicking, and panicked people make mistakes. We just need him to make one big enough that we can trace it back to the source. And if he doesn't contact me, then we pursue other avenues and you go back to your life with a raise and my gratitude. Vincent's expression softened slightly. But he will contact you, Lena. Because right now, you're the biggest threat to their entire operation. They can't ignore you. They have to either neutralize you or recruit you. And we're betting they'll try recruitment first. She took a breath. Let it out slowly. Okay? Okay, you'll do it? Chen asked, surprise evident. I'll do it. Margaret started to speak, probably to outline legal protections or risks, but Vincent raised a hand. Give us the room, please. The others filed out. Margaret gave Lena a long look that might have been concern or assessment. Daniel left his laptop open, screen still glowing with evidence of conspiracy. Chen gathered his spreadsheets with the careful movements of someone who'd learned to be cautious around power. When the door closed, Vincent leaned back in his chair. You don't have to do this. You already said that. I'm saying it again. What I'm asking, it's not fair. You came here to expose billing fraud, and I'm turning it into espionage. Lena met his gaze. Why did you step in last night? When Dominic grabbed me, when he was dragging me toward that hallway, you could have waited, watched, gathered more evidence. Why intervene? Vincent was quiet for a moment. Because watching someone get hurt to protect an investigation is a line I won't cross. Even if it costs you the case? Even then, she nodded slowly. That's why I'm doing this. Because someone has to draw lines. Someone has to say no to the theft and the manipulation and the assumption that people are disposable. She paused. You drew a line for me. I'm drawing one too. Something shifted in Vincent's expression. Respect, maybe, or recognition. Your mother must have been remarkable. She was a hospital janitor who died from cancer she couldn't afford to treat properly. The world didn't think she was remarkable. But she taught me that dignity isn't about how much power you have. It's about what you refuse to give up. Vincent stood, walked to a cabinet against the wall, and poured 2 glasses of water from a crystal decanter. He handed one to Lena. To dignity, then, and to the people who refused to surrender it. She took the glass. What happens after we expose them? Legal proceedings. Arrests, probably. Certainly terminations and lawsuits. The people behind this will try to destroy evidence, discredit witnesses, make deals. He sipped his water. It will be ugly. And the managers they used, like Hayes? That depends on what they choose. Cooperation might earn leniency. Obstruction guarantees consequences. His jaw tightened. But I won't lie to you. Men like Hayes often walk away with lighter sentences than they deserve. They make deals, provide testimony against bigger fish, and the system rewards them for betraying the people who trusted them. That's not justice. No, it's efficiency. The law cares more about closing cases than balancing scales. Lena set down her glass. Then why do this? If they'll just make deals and walk away, because some of them won't. Because every conspiracy exposed makes the next one harder to execute. Because right now, whoever's orchestrating this thinks they're untouchable. Proving them wrong matters, even if the punishment doesn't match the crime. She understood. It wasn't about perfect justice. It was about resistance, about making the theft harder, the corruption more expensive, the assumption of disposability less certain. When do I start? She asked. Tomorrow. Show up for your shift like normal. Be nervous. That's expected. If anyone asks about what happened with Hayes, say the owner intervened, the situation is being investigated, and you've been told not to discuss it. That's close enough to truth that you won't have to fake the discomfort. What if Hayes shows up? He won't. We made it clear he's trespassing if he enters the building, but he'll find another way to reach you. Vincent pulled out his phone, typed something quickly. Daniel will meet you at 6 a.m. to install the tracking and recording software. Memorize this number. He showed her the screen. If anything feels wrong, if you're scared, if you need extraction, call it. Don't hesitate. Don't try to be brave. Just call. She memorized the number, repeated it twice in her head. One more thing, Vincent said. The people we're dealing with, they didn't get powerful by being nice. If they perceive you as a threat instead of a resource, they will try to hurt you. Not physically, probably. They'll go after your brother, your apartment, your reputation. They'll find every vulnerability and press until you break. I know. Do you? Because knowing intellectually and experiencing it are different things. These people destroy lives without losing sleep. Lena thought about sitting across from her mother's oncologist, hearing the words stage 4 and palliative care. And I'm sorry, knowing insurance wouldn't cover the treatments that might have helped. Thought about the bills that arrived anyway, the collections calls, the caseworker who'd suggested maybe Danny would be better in a state facility. She'd already experienced people who destroyed lives without losing sleep. I know, she repeated, and I'm still doing this. Vincent studied her for a long moment. Then he extended his hand. Partners then, until this is finished. She shook it. His grip was firm, brief, professional. Partners. The next morning, Lena met Daniel in the parking lot of a coffee shop 3 blocks from her apartment. He handed her a phone identical to her current one, already configured with her number. Swap the SIM card when you get home, he said. This one has encrypted firmware. Everything you say, everywhere you go, it's logged and backed up in real time. We'll have teams monitoring, but the data stream is passive. We can see where you are and hear what's happening, but we can't communicate back unless you call the emergency number. What if they take my phone? Then we track it and get law enforcement involved immediately. But honestly, if they take your phone, the operation's already blown. These people are sophisticated, not stupid. They'll assume surveillance and work around it. He showed her the panic button, a specific pattern of taps on the lock screen that would send an instant alert. Made her practice it 5 times until the motion felt automatic. Last thing, Daniel said. Hayes is staying at the Riverside Inn, room 237. We've been monitoring his communications. He's received 3 calls from the burner number since yesterday, each one shorter than 90 seconds. We can't crack the encryption, but the pattern suggests he's getting instructions. Has he tried to contact me? Not yet. But he will. When he does, remember, you're scared and confused. You don't understand the bigger picture. You just want your job back and to forget this happened. Can you sell that? Lena thought about 18 months of making herself small. Yes. She arrived at the Sterling room at 5:45, 15 minutes early like always. The staff entrance felt different now, no longer a threshold between survival and poverty, but between 2 versions of herself. The one who stayed invisible and the one who decided visibility was worth the risk. Inside, the morning prep crew moved through familiar routines. Coffee brewing, linens being pressed. Miguel in the kitchen, already prepping for lunch service. Everything looked normal. Nothing was. Maria spotted her first. "Lena, oh my God, are you okay? I heard Dominic got fired. Is it true?" "It's complicated." "Is it true about the fraud? About him stealing from customers?" Maria's voice dropped to a whisper. "People are saying you reported him, that you had evidence. So much for keeping it quiet." "Who's saying that?" "Everyone. Tony said you had a notebook. Stephanie said the owner was here, that he saw everything." "Is Dominic really gone?" "I can't talk about it," Lena said, which was true enough. "I was told the situation is under investigation." "But you're not fired." "No." Maria grabbed her hands. "Good, because honestly, Dominic was an ass. If he was stealing, I'm glad someone caught him. I'm glad it was you." The sincerity in her voice made Lena's chest tight. "Thanks." The shift started. Lena took her usual section, tables 7, 12, and 15, poured water, recited specials, smiled at customers who didn't know the woman serving their lunch had agreed to bait a corporate conspiracy. The normalcy felt surreal, like acting in a play where only she knew the script had changed. At 2:17 p.m., her phone buzzed. Unknown number, text message. "We need to talk. Tonight. 8 p.m. Corner of 5th and Madison. Come alone. D." Her heart kicked. Daniel would be seeing this message too. Somewhere, monitors were noting the contact, logging the number, preparing response protocols. She was performing now, even in her reaction. She typed back, "I don't think that's a good idea." 3 dots appeared. Disappeared? Appeared again. "I can explain everything. It's not what you think. Please. I'm trying to help you." Classic manipulation. Make the victim think they're the one being rescued. She'd seen this pattern in the relationships around her. Abusive boyfriends who swore they were protecting their girlfriends. Bosses who framed exploitation as opportunity. "You grabbed me. You tried to drag me to your office. I panicked. I'm sorry. I was scared. There are things happening you don't understand. Dangerous things. I need to warn you." She waited 30 seconds before responding, letting him sweat. "Why should I trust you?" "Because the people investigating this are worse than anything I did. They're using you. When they're done, you'll be the one who takes the fall. I can protect you, but only if you listen." The lies were almost elegant. Paint Vincent as the real villain, position himself as the reluctant whistleblower, make her doubt everything she'd learned. If she hadn't spent 2 hours yesterday going through evidence with auditors and lawyers, it might have worked. 1 hour. Public place. "I choose the location." The reply came immediately. "Fine." "Where?" She thought fast. "Public, but not too crowded. Somewhere Daniel's team could monitor without being obvious. Riverside Park. West entrance. The bench near the fountain. 8 p.m. "Thank you, Lena. You're making the right choice." She pocketed her phone and finished her shift, hands steady despite the adrenaline. When she clocked out at 4:30, Daniel was waiting in the parking lot, leaning against a car that probably cost more than her annual salary. "We saw the messages," he said without preamble. "Good choice on location. Park's public enough that he can't try anything physical, but open enough that we can position surveillance. Will he come alone?" "Probably. If he brings backup, it'll be obvious and defeat the purpose. He needs you to feel safe enough to talk." Daniel pulled out a small device that looked like a pen. "Wear this clip to your collar. Video and audio, encrypted transmission. We'll have teams positioned around the park, but they'll stay invisible unless you signal distress." She took the pen. "What if he's actually trying to warn me? What if there's some truth to what he said? About Vincent using you?" Daniel's expression hardened. "Hayes is a con artist trying to save his own skin. He'll say whatever keeps you confused and compliant. Don't let him." "I won't." "I mean it, Lena. These people are good at manipulation. They'll find your doubts, your fears, your weaknesses, and they'll use them. Stay focused on what you know is true." She nodded. "I know Vincent stopped Dominic from dragging me into that hallway. I know the evidence in my notebook is real. I know Hayes was stealing and someone was telling him how to do it. Those are facts." "Good. Hold on to those." At 7:45 p.m., Lena walked through Riverside Park wearing jeans, a hoodie, and the pen camera clipped to her collar. The park was busy enough. Joggers, couples, a few people walking dogs. Normal evening activity. No one looked at her twice. She sat on the bench near the fountain and waited. Dominic Hayes arrived at exactly 8 p.m. He looked different. Rumpled clothes instead of his usual sharp suits, stubble on his jaw, eyes that darted around the park like he expected ambush. He sat down next to her, keeping a careful distance. "Thank you for coming," he said. "Tell me what you wanted to say." He ran a hand through his hair. "I made mistakes. I know that. But everything I did, it wasn't my idea. I was following orders." "Whose orders?" "I can't tell you that yet. Not until I know I can trust you." Lena kept her expression neutral. "You want me to trust you, but you won't trust me? I want to make sure you understand what you're involved in." He leaned forward, urgency creeping into his voice. "Vincent D'Angelo isn't who you think he is. He's using this fraud investigation to consolidate power, eliminate rivals. You're not helping expose corruption. You're helping him destroy competition." "That doesn't make sense. Why would he expose fraud at his own restaurant?" "Because it gives him an excuse to purge management, restructure operations, and tighten control. He'll use your documentation as proof that he's cleaning house, but really he's just removing anyone who might question him." Dominic's eyes locked onto hers. "You think you're fighting corruption. You're actually enabling it." It was a good lie. Coherent, plausible, designed to flip the narrative. If she didn't know about the messages on his phone, the coordinated fraud at multiple properties, the hostile takeover attempt, she might have believed him. "What do you want from me?" she asked. "I want you to walk away. Tell D'Angelo you changed your mind, that you can't help with the investigation. Go back to your life." "And if I don't?" His expression shifted. Something harder moved beneath the desperation. "Then you become collateral damage. The people orchestrating this, they don't care about waitresses or managers or anyone who gets in their way. They'll destroy you without thinking twice." "Is that a threat?" "It's reality." He pulled out his phone, showed her a photo. "This is your brother, right? Daniel Carter, age 16, attends Lincoln High School. Has therapy appointments every Tuesday and Thursday at the Riverside Clinic." Ice flooded her veins. "Don't. I'm not threatening him. I'm showing you that they know about him. They know where you live, where he goes to school, who takes care of him when you're working. If you keep cooperating with D'Angelo, they will use that information." Lena's hands clenched. Every instinct screamed to lunge at him, to grab his phone and smash it, to make him stop talking about Danny. But she forced herself to stay still, to breathe, to remember the camera clipped to her collar and the teams positioned around the park. "Who is they?" she asked quietly. "People with resources you can't imagine. People who make D'Angelo look small." He leaned closer. "Walk away, Lena, please. I don't want to see you get hurt." "Why do you care?" "Because I got pulled into this the same way. They found my weakness, gambling debts, ex-wife's alimony, and they offered a solution. Just inflate a few bills, they said. Nobody gets hurt. Easy money." His voice cracked slightly. "I didn't know it was part of something bigger until I was already trapped. Don't make my mistake." It was almost convincing. The vulnerability, the regret, the warning. Almost. But she'd seen the messages on his phone, seen the methodical instructions, the calculated amounts, the pattern that stretched across months. He hadn't been coerced. He'd been complicit. "I need time to think," she said. "You don't have time. They're watching you right now, probably watching both of us." He stood up. "I'm leaving the city tomorrow. Disappearing. If you're smart, you'll do the same. Take your brother and go somewhere they can't find you. And if I stay," Dominic looked at her with something that might have been pity, "then I'm sorry. I really am." He walked away, hands in his pockets, shoulders hunched. Within seconds, he disappeared into the evening crowd. Lena sat on the bench, heart hammering, mind racing. The threats against Danny, the photograph, the implication that powerful people were watching, waiting, ready to hurt her family if she didn't back down. Her phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number. "You did well. Team's tracking Hayes now. Meet at the tower, 9 p.m. V. She stood and walked out of the park, legs unsteady, fury and fear warring in her chest. Around her the city moved on. oblivious, indifferent, vast. Somewhere in it, people were watching surveillance feeds, making decisions about whether she was asset or liability. Somewhere in it, her brother was safe at home with Mrs. Chen, building Lego structures and living in a world where threats weren't real yet. And somewhere in it, Dominic Hayes was running to whoever had turned him into a weapon, reporting back that the waitress was scared, uncertain, possibly controllable. Let him report. Let him think she was breaking, because the fury was winning over the fear. By the time she reached the D'Angelo Tower at 8:55 p.m., she'd made her decision. Vincent, Daniel, Margaret, and Chen were waiting in the conference room. They looked up as she entered, and Vincent must have seen something in her face because he stood immediately. What happened? He threatened Danny, showed me photographs, told me people were watching him. Her voice came out steady despite the rage underneath. He tried to make me think you were the villain, and he was saving me. Daniel was already pulling up his laptop. We got everything, audio, video, the works. His statements are documented. Can we use it? Margaret asked. Depends on admissibility, but it's certainly leverage. She looked at Lena. How are you? Angry. Vincent walked over, stood close enough that his presence felt solid, grounding. Did he say anything that identified who he's working for? No, just they and people with resources. But he's leaving the city tomorrow, said he's disappearing. He's running, Chen said, which means whoever's controlling him is cutting ties. They'll clean up evidence, distance themselves, make Hayes the fall guy. We can't let him disappear, Margaret said sharply. He's our best connection to the source. Daniel's fingers flew across the keyboard. Already on it. His phone's still transmitting location data. He's heading northeast, toward the interstate. Vincent's jaw tightened. Contact law enforcement. Material witness in an ongoing fraud investigation. I want him stopped before he crosses state lines. On what grounds? Margaret asked. We don't have an active warrant. Then get one. Call Judge Morrison. Tell her it's urgent. Margaret pulled out her phone and stepped into the hallway. Daniel kept tracking Hayes' movement on the screen, watching a blue dot crawl across a digital map. Chen was already drafting documentation, building the case file in real time. Lena stood in the middle of it all, watching power mobilize. Lawyers and investigators and resources she couldn't have imagined 3 days ago, all moving because she'd refused to process a fraudulent bill. Are you okay? Vincent asked quietly. She looked at him. They know about Danny. They photographed him, used him as leverage. I know, I'm sorry. Don't be sorry, be effective. Her voice came out harder than intended. You said you'd protect me. Protect him too. Already done. I have a security detail on your apartment building as of 20 minutes ago. 2-person team, rotating shifts. Your brother doesn't go anywhere without protection. Something in her chest loosened slightly. Thank you. Thank me by staying safe. Hayes' threat was designed to make you back down. Instead, you documented it and came straight here. That was smart. It was angry. Anger's useful, as long as you control it instead of letting it control you. Margaret returned. Judge Morrison is issuing a material witness warrant. State police will intercept Hayes within the hour. Good. Vincent turned to Lena. This changes the timeline. Hayes getting arrested means whoever's behind this knows we're moving fast. They'll accelerate their own plans. Things are about to get more dangerous. I'm not backing down. I know, but I need you to go home, stay with your brother, and let the security team do their job. We'll handle Hayes. Tomorrow, we regroup and figure out next steps. She wanted to argue, wanted to be part of the interrogation, the investigation, the hunt. But exhaustion was setting in, adrenaline fading into the crash that always followed. Okay, she said. Daniel drove her home, quiet and professional. The security detail was already in place when she arrived. 2 people in a sedan across the street, watching the building entrance. She felt their presence like a weight, protective and suffocating at once. Mrs. Chen opened the door looking worried. Lena, there are people outside. I know. They're there to help. Is Danny asleep? Just now. He waited up for you, but I convinced him to brush his teeth and get in bed. Her expression softened. Is everything all right? It's complicated. Thank you for staying late. Of course, dear. Call me if you need anything. After Mrs. Chen left, Lena checked on Danny. He was sprawled across his bed, one arm flung over his favorite blanket, breathing deep and even. She stood in the doorway watching him, thinking about Dominic's photograph, about threats and leverage, and people who use children as weapons. Her phone buzzed. Text from Vincent. Hayes intercepted. In custody. Get some rest. Tomorrow we find out who he's protecting. She set the phone down and finally let herself feel it. The fear she'd been holding back, the vulnerability of having a brother to protect, the knowledge that she'd drawn a line and now had to defend it. But underneath the fear was something else, something that felt like purpose. For 18 months she'd been invisible. Now she was the center of a conspiracy's attention. Now powerful people were scrambling because a waitress had refused to be complicit. Now the fight had truly begun. She went to bed but didn't sleep much, mind racing through possibilities and strategies. When dawn came, she was already awake, already planning. Whatever came next, she'd be ready. The call came at 6:47 a.m., while Lena was making coffee in a kitchen that felt smaller with the knowledge of security teams outside. Vincent's voice was clipped, urgent. Hayes is talking. We need you here in 90 minutes. What did he say? Not over the phone. Daniel's already on his way to pick you up. The line went dead. Lena stared at her phone, then at Danny, sitting at the kitchen table with a bowl of cereal, completely absorbed in sorting the pieces by color before eating them. The routine calmed him. Structure, predictability, the world arranged in ways that made sense. She wished her world felt that orderly. Mrs. Chen's coming over early today, she told him. I have to go to work. Danny looked up, milk dripping from his spoon. It's Saturday. I know, special project. Will you be back for Lego time? The question cracked something in her chest. Lego time was sacred. Every Saturday afternoon, 2 hours of building whatever Danny wanted while she asked questions about his designs, and he explained in meticulous detail why each piece mattered. I'll try, she said, then corrected herself. Yes, I'll be back. She couldn't promise safety or certainty about anything else happening in her life right now, but she could promise 2 hours of Lego. That much control she still had. Daniel arrived at 7:52, driving a different car than yesterday, something anonymous and forgettable. He handed her coffee in a travel mug without comment, which she appreciated. Small kindnesses mattered when the world felt like it was accelerating beyond her ability to process. Hayes broke around 3 a.m., Daniel said as they merged into traffic. Spent 6 hours insisting he was the victim, that he'd been coerced, that he didn't know the full scope. Margaret's people kept pushing. Finally, he asked for a deal. What kind of deal? Reduced charges in exchange for testimony. He gives us everything: names, communication records, the complete network. Prosecution gets a cooperative witness. He gets to avoid the worst consequences. Lena's hands tightened around the coffee mug. So he steals from people, threatens a kid, and walks away with a slap on the wrist? Pretty much. That's how it works when you're useful enough. That's not justice. No, Daniel agreed quietly. It's strategy. Sometimes they overlap. Mostly, they don't. The D'Angelo Tower looked different in morning light, glass and steel reflecting sunrise, a monument to the kind of power Lena was only beginning to understand. The security at the entrance recognized her now, waved her through without asking for ID. She didn't know if that felt like progress or danger. Vincent was waiting in the conference room with Margaret, Chen, and 2 new faces. A woman in her 30s wearing a prosecutor's determination-like armor, and a man who had the controlled stillness of law enforcement. Lena Carter, Vincent said, this is Assistant District Attorney Rebecca Walsh and Detective Marcus Rivera. They've been briefed on the situation. Rebecca extended her hand. Thank you for coming. I know this has been overwhelming. I'm managing. You're doing more than managing. Your documentation is the foundation of this entire case. Rebecca gestured to the chair. Please, sit. We have a lot to cover and not much time. Marcus pulled up a recording on his laptop. This is from Hayes' interview at 0300. Watch. The screen showed a small room, institutional and stark. Dominic Hayes sat across from Margaret and a man Lena didn't recognize, looking like he'd aged a decade overnight. His expensive clothes were wrinkled, his confidence completely stripped away. I want immunity, he was saying on the recording. Full immunity, witness protection, everything. You're not in a position to dictate terms, Margaret's voice responded. You've committed fraud across multiple properties, threatened a witness, and fled from investigators. Right now, you're looking at 15 years minimum. I can give you Richard Castellanos." The room on the recording went silent. In the conference room, Lena watched Vincent's expression harden. "Say that again," Margaret said carefully. "Richard Castellanos, Senior VP of Operations for D'Angelo Enterprises. He's been orchestrating the entire scheme, the fraud, the data manipulation, everything. He's working with Maxwell Global to engineer a hostile takeover." Rebecca paused the recording. "Richard Castellanos has been with your company for 11 years, she said to Vincent. "Promoted to Senior VP 3 years ago. Has access to operational data across all properties, financial systems, personnel records. If he's the leak, then he's had years to position himself," Vincent finished. His voice was cold, controlled, but Lena could see the betrayal underneath. "What else did Hayes give you?" Marcus resumed the playback. Dominic was leaning forward now, eager, desperate to be useful. "Richard recruited me 18 months ago. Said there was an opportunity to make extra money with minimal risk. All I had to do was adjust certain bills according to his instructions. Small amounts, specific tables, nothing that would trigger immediate flags. He told me it was a test of the system that the company needed to identify security vulnerabilities." "And you believe that?" the unknown man in the recording asked. "I wanted to believe it. I had debts." He offered a solution. Dominic's voice cracked. "I didn't know about Maxwell Global until 3 months ago. That's when he told me the real plan. Make D'Angelo's operations look incompetent, build a pattern of mismanagement, give Maxwell ammunition for their takeover bid." "How many other managers are involved?" Margaret asked. 3 that I know of. Anderson at the Meridian Hotel, Foster at Bellevue Bistro, someone at the downtown property, whose name I never got. Richard kept us compartmentalized. We weren't supposed to know about each other." "But you did." "I overheard a phone call. Richard was talking to someone at Maxwell, updating them on progress. He mentioned multiple points of failure across the portfolio. That's when I realized it was bigger than just the Sterling room." Rebecca paused the recording again. "We verified his claims. Anderson and Foster are already under surveillance. Both show similar patterns: billing irregularities, unexplained revenue gaps, customer complaints about overcharges. The third location is harder to confirm, but we're working on it." "What about Maxwell Global?" Vincent asked. "What's their angle?" Chen pulled up a financial presentation on the screen. "Maxwell Global is a private equity firm specializing in hostile acquisitions of underperforming hospitality assets. They've been circling your company for 8 months, buying up shares, positioning themselves for a takeover. But they need cause. Evidence that current leadership is incompetent, that operations are mismanaged, that shareholders would be better served by new ownership. The fraud gives them that cause," Lena said slowly. "Multiple properties hemorrhaging money, managers stealing unchecked, no oversight. It makes Vincent look negligent." "Exactly." Chen highlighted sections of the presentation. "Maxwell's preliminary offer was rejected 6 months ago. Since then, they've been building a case. The fraud is part of it, but there's more. Leaked internal documents suggesting financial instability. Anonymous complaints to regulatory boards. Media whispers about health code violations that never quite materialize but damage reputation anyway. Death by 1,000 cuts," Vincent said. "Make me look incompetent from every angle until shareholders demand change." Marcus restarted the recording. "Tell us about Richard's communication with Maxwell." "Encrypted messages through a secure app. He showed me once, said it was how we'd coordinate if I ever needed emergency instructions. The app deletes everything automatically, but I took screenshots of a few conversations before I understood what I was involved in. Insurance, I guess." "Do you still have those screenshots?" Dominic pulled out his phone, hands shaking. "I uploaded them to a cloud account. Password protected. I can give you access." Rebecca stopped the recording and looked at Lena. "Those screenshots are what broke the case open. Richard Castellanos communicating directly with Maxwell executives, coordinating the fraud scheme, discussing timeline for the takeover. We have evidence now, actionable, prosecutable evidence." "When do you arrest him?" Lena asked. "That's complicated," Rebecca said. "Richard doesn't know we're onto him yet. Hayes' arrest hasn't been made public, and we've kept his cooperation quiet. That gives us a small window to gather additional evidence and potentially flip Richard against Maxwell's executives. You want him to make a deal too? Lena's voice came out sharper than intended. After everything he orchestrated? I want convictions that stick. Maxwell's executives are insulated, protected by corporate structure and expensive lawyers. Richard's our best path to them. If we arrest him now without leverage, he lawyers up and we spend years in court fighting disclosure. If we pressure him with overwhelming evidence and offer a path that doesn't end in 20 years in prison, he might give us everything. Might. It's the best option we have. Lena stood and walked to the window, staring out at the city spreading below. Somewhere down there, Richard Castellanos was going about his day, confident in his conspiracy, unaware that a waitress's notebook and a manager's desperation had unraveled everything. "What do you need from me?" she asked without turning around. "Your testimony, eventually. For now, we need you to continue appearing normal. Richard has eyes in the Sterling room, other staff he's recruited, surveillance he's monitoring. If you suddenly disappear or act differently, he'll know something's wrong. You want me to keep working there? Keep serving tables while a man who orchestrated fraud and threats walks past me in meetings." "Richard rarely visits individual properties," Vincent said. "He operates from corporate headquarters. You likely won't see him." "But he'll be watching." "Yes." She turned to face them. "What's the timeline?" Rebecca checked her notes. "We need 72 hours to build an airtight case. Gather evidence, coordinate with federal prosecutors since this crosses state lines with Maxwell's involvement. Position assets for arrest. Then we move simultaneously. Richard, Maxwell executives, the other corrupted managers. One coordinated sweep that doesn't give anyone time to destroy evidence or flee. And if something goes wrong in those 72 hours, then we adjust. But Lena, I want to be clear, this is dangerous. Richard Castellanos has proven he's willing to threaten witnesses. If he perceives you as a threat instead of a non-issue, he could escalate beyond surveillance. He already threatened Danny. That was Hayes following orders. If Richard decides to act directly, it will be more sophisticated, more permanent. Rebecca's expression was grave. We can offer protective custody, move you and your brother to a safe location until arrests are made. Danny's routine, his school, his therapy, Lego time on Saturday afternoons. Everything that kept his world stable and safe, ripped away because she'd refused to process a fraudulent bill. "No," Lena said. "We stay home. With the security detail you've already assigned." She looked at Vincent. "Unless that's changed?" "It hasn't. 2-person rotating team, 24-hour coverage. I've also upgraded your apartment building's security system. Cameras, access controls, additional lighting. Daniel's monitoring everything remotely." "Then we stay." Rebecca started to argue, but Marcus cut her off. "The kid has autism, right? Sudden relocation would be traumatic. If D'Angelo's security is solid, and we keep law enforcement presence nearby, staying home might actually be safer than moving to an unfamiliar location." "Fine," Rebecca said reluctantly. "But at the first sign of trouble, we'll extract immediately," Vincent finished. "You have my word." The meeting continued for another hour. Details about evidence collection, witness testimony, coordination with federal agencies. Lena absorbed what she could, but exhaustion was setting in. The adrenaline that had sustained her through yesterday's confrontation was fading into something heavier. When they finally finished, Vincent walked her to the elevator. "You're handling this better than most trained operatives would." "I don't feel like I'm handling it." "You're still standing, still fighting. That counts." He paused. "Hayes mentioned something in his interview that didn't make the recording we showed you, about why Richard chose the Sterling room as one of his targets." "Why?" "Because it's the flagship property. The first restaurant I ever opened, the one that built my reputation. Richard knew fraud there would hurt more than at any other location. It was personal." Lena studied his face. "You trusted him." "I promoted him, gave him access, responsibility, the resources to build a career, and he used all of it to try to destroy me." Vincent's jaw tightened. Betrayal from strangers is business. Betrayal from people you've invested in, that's different. "I'm sorry." "Don't be. Just help me finish this." He handed her a new phone, identical to the one Daniel had given her, but slightly heavier. "Upgraded security. If you need anything, call. Day or night, any reason. I meant what I said about protection. She took the phone. Why are you doing this? Really? You could have fired me, paid me off to stay quiet, handled the fraud internally. Why bring in prosecutors and risk everything going public? Vincent was quiet for a moment. Because 11 years ago, someone I trusted did exactly what Richard's doing now. Betrayed me, tried to destroy my business, used people I cared about as collateral damage. I survived, but barely. And I promised myself that if I ever had the chance to stop that from happening to someone else, I would. He met her eyes. You drew a line. I'm making sure it holds. The elevator arrived. Lena stepped in, then held the door. 72 hours. Then what? Then we take them down. All of them. Publicly, legally, permanently. And after that? A slight smile touched Vincent's face. After that, we rebuild. Better systems, better oversight, better people. Starting with you. The elevator doors closed before she could respond. She rode down alone, watching the floor numbers decrease, feeling the weight of what she'd agreed to. 72 hours of pretending everything was normal while a conspiracy collapsed around her. 72 hours of being watched by people who'd already proven they'd threatened children to maintain control. 72 hours until the trap closed. Daniel was waiting in the lobby. I'll drive you home. I need to stop somewhere first. He raised an eyebrow but didn't argue. Where? The Sterling Room. I want to see it. It's closed on Saturday mornings. I have keys. The restaurant looked different, empty. Sunlight streamed through the tall windows, illuminating dust motes and the careful arrangement of tables. No customers, no staff, no carefully maintained illusion of elegance. Just a space where theft had happened methodically for months while everyone looked away. Lena walked through the dining room, running her hand along the back of table 12. Mr. Brennan's usual spot. How many times had his bill been inflated? How many other regulars had paid for meals they didn't order, charges they didn't notice until weeks later when credit card statements arrived? What are we doing here? Daniel asked from the doorway. I needed to see it without the performance, without pretending. She moved to table 7. This is where it started for me. 3 months ago, standing right here, realizing the numbers didn't match. I could have ignored it. Should have, probably. Would have been safer. But you didn't. No, I wrote it down, started documenting, turned confusion into evidence. She looked at him. Do you think I made the right choice? Does it matter what I think? Maybe. Daniel crossed to where she stood. I think you did the only thing you could do and still live with yourself. Some people can ignore theft, can rationalize it, minimize it, decide it's not their problem. You're not one of those people. My brother's life is at risk because I'm not one of those people. Your brother's life has meaning because you're not one of those people. Because you're teaching him, even if he doesn't understand it yet, that integrity isn't optional, that some lines don't bend. He paused. My sister has autism too, nonverbal, needs full-time care. I know what it costs, financially, emotionally, all of it. I know the weight. Lena looked at him with new understanding. Is that why you work for Vincent? Part of it. He pays well enough that I can afford the care she needs. But mostly it's because he's one of the few people with power who actually uses it to protect instead of exploit. When he says he'll keep your brother safe, he means it. I've seen him mobilize resources to protect people he barely knows because it was the right thing to do. You believe in him. I believe in what he's trying to build. A version of business that doesn't require becoming a monster. It's harder, more expensive, more complicated. But it's possible. Daniel's phone buzzed. He checked it, frowned. We need to go. Now. What's wrong? Security alert at your apartment building. Someone tried to access the service entrance. Lena's heart stopped. Danny is fine. Mrs. Chen called it in immediately. Security responded. The person fled. But we need to get you home. They made it back in 12 minutes that felt like hours. The security team met them at the building entrance. Different people than before, harder looking, with the controlled alertness of professionals responding to a threat. Situation contained, the woman said. Male, approximately 6 feet, wearing delivery uniform. Tried to access the service entrance using a stolen keycard. When confronted, he ran. We have footage. She showed Lena her phone. The video was grainy but clear enough. A man in generic delivery clothes, face partially obscured by a cap, swiping a keycard at the service door. When it didn't work, he tried forcing it. Then the security team approached and he bolted. "You get his face?" Daniel asked. "Partial, running it through recognition now." Lena was already moving toward the elevator. Danny would be scared, confused. Mrs. Chen was capable, but she was 73 and this wasn't her job. She reached the apartment and found them in the living room. Danny on the couch with his headphones on, building a Lego spaceship with focused intensity, and Mrs. Chen standing by the window with her phone clutched in both hands. "Oh, thank goodness," Mrs. Chen said when Lena entered. "I didn't want to worry him. Told him the security people were practicing drills. You did perfectly, thank you." Lena hugged her, felt the older woman's hands trembling. "I'm sorry you had to deal with that." "I'm just glad Danny's safe." She lowered her voice. "Lena, what's happening? Who are these people?" "It's complicated. Work situation that got out of hand. It'll be resolved soon." Mrs. Chen studied her face. "You're in danger. We're protected, I promise." "You shouldn't have to promise that. You're 24 years old. You should be worried about college and careers and dating, not security teams and threats." Her expression softened. "Your mother would be so proud of you, and so worried. She'd tell me to finish what I started." "Yes, she would." Mrs. Chen squeezed her hand. "Call me if you need anything at all." After she left, Lena sat next to Danny on the couch. He didn't look up from his Lego construction, but he shifted slightly so their shoulders touched, his way of acknowledging her presence. "Did you have breakfast?" she asked. "Toast and eggs. Mrs. Chen made them wrong, but I ate them anyway." "That was kind of you." She was worried. "I didn't want to make it worse." He clicked a blue piece into place. "Are we safe?" The question hit her like a physical blow. Danny rarely asked about safety. His therapist said it meant his baseline anxiety was elevated, that he was processing stress his brain couldn't fully categorize. "Yes," she said firmly. "We're safe. The people outside are making sure of it." "Okay." He added a red piece. "Will you do Lego time later?" "Absolutely. 2 hours. Your choice of project." I want to build a castle with a moat and a drawbridge that actually works." "Then that's what we'll build." He nodded, satisfied, and returned to his spaceship. Lena watched him work, thinking about the man who'd tried to access their building, about Richard Castellano somewhere in the city coordinating threats, about 72 hours that felt simultaneously too long and not nearly enough. Her phone buzzed, text from Vincent. Facial recognition got a hit. "The man at your building is Marcus Webb, contract security for Maxwell Global. He wasn't there to deliver anything. I'm sending additional protection." Another text followed immediately. "You need to reconsider protective custody. This is escalating." She looked at Danny, at the careful way he sorted Lego pieces by color and size, at the routine that kept his world comprehensible, thought about ripping him away from everything familiar. Watching his anxiety spike into meltdowns that could last for days, she texted back, "We stay. But I want a panic room installed, something Danny can understand as a safe space if needed." The response came within seconds. "Already ordered. Installation team arrives in 2 hours. Military-grade safe room disguised as a closet renovation. Danny won't even notice until it's explained to him." Lena set down her phone and pulled out a Lego instruction manual. "Want to start planning the castle?" Danny's face lit up. "Yes. Can we use the gray stones for the walls?" "Absolutely." They spread the pieces across the coffee table, sorting and planning, building something that would have walls and a moat and a drawbridge that actually worked. Protection built brick by brick, layer by layer, against threats that came from directions she'd never anticipated. The installation team arrived at 2 p.m. exactly. They worked with quiet efficiency, transforming the small storage closet near Danny's room into something that looked identical from outside but contained reinforced walls, independent air supply, satellite communication, and enough supplies to last 72 hours if needed. The door mechanism was simple enough that Danny could operate it himself, a specific sequence of touches on what looked like ordinary shelving. "Show him how it works," the team leader said. "Make it feel like a secret clubhouse, not a panic room. Kids process it better that way." So Lena showed Danny the secret door, the hidden room, The way the walls were strong enough to keep anything bad outside. He loved it immediately, declaring it his spaceship command center and spending 20 minutes arranging Lego minifigures on the built-in shelves. By 4 p.m., security was upgraded, the panic room was installed, and Danny was building his castle with systematic focus. Lena sat on the floor beside him, adding pieces where he directed, trying to quiet the part of her mind that kept calculating how much could go wrong in 72 hours. Her phone rang. Rebecca Walsh. "We have a problem," the ADA said without preamble. "Richard Castellanos just requested an emergency meeting with Maxwell Global's CEO. Tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. We think he's spooked." "By what?" "We're not sure. Maybe Hayes' disappearance. Maybe the security presence at your apartment. Maybe just instinct that something shifted. But if he's meeting with Maxwell executives, he's either reporting progress or asking for emergency instructions. Either way, we need to accelerate our timeline." Lena's stomach dropped. "How accelerated?" "Tomorrow night instead of 72 hours. We move on all targets simultaneously. Richard, Maxwell executives, the other corrupted managers. Coordinated arrests across the city." "That's not enough time to prepare. It's the time we have. If Richard suspects we're onto him, he'll start destroying evidence. We move tomorrow or we risk losing everything." Rebecca paused. "Vincent wants to talk to you. I'm transferring." A click, then Vincent's voice. "I'm sorry. I know this isn't what we planned. What do you need from me?" "Same as before. Act normal tomorrow. Go to work if you're scheduled. Don't let Richard know anything's changed. Can you do that?" She looked at Danny, at the castle taking shape piece by piece, at the panic room disguised as a closet, at the life she'd built from survival and was now defending with everything she had. "Yes," she said. "I can do that." "Lena," his voice softened, "when this is over, when arrests are made and it's safe, you get to choose what happens next. Your job, your future, all of it. I meant what I said about rebuilding. You'll be part of that, in whatever capacity you want. Let's survive tomorrow first." "Fair enough. Daniel will brief you on the exact timeline tonight. Get some rest if you can." She hung up and returned to the castle. Danny had finished the main walls and was working on the moat, carefully placing blue Lego pieces in a pattern that represented water. "It needs to be deep enough that enemies can't cross," he explained, "but not so deep that defenders can't see the bottom. Visibility matters in defense." "That's smart thinking. It's strategic." He added another blue piece, "like how you're protecting us. Multiple layers, security outside, safe room inside, and you in between. Defensive depth." Sometimes Danny's way of processing the world cut straight to truth. Everyone else danced around. She was the middle layer, the one that stood between external threats and the person she'd promised to protect. "Yeah," she said quietly. Exactly like that. They built until dinner, until Danny's bedtime routine, until the apartment was quiet except for the soft sounds of security teams changing shifts outside. Lena sat in the dark living room, phone in hand, watching the city lights spread below. Tomorrow, the trap would close. Tomorrow, arrests would happen. Evidence would be seized. The conspiracy would collapse into prosecutions and trials and consequences. Tomorrow, Richard Castellanos and Maxwell executives and corrupted managers would face what happened when someone refused to be complicit in their theft. Tomorrow, a waitress who'd documented fraud in a spiral notebook would watch the powerful fall because she'd said one word: theft. But tonight she sat in her apartment with her brother sleeping safely down the hall, protected by security teams and panic rooms and people who'd mobilized resources she couldn't have imagined 4 days ago. Tonight she was still just Lena Carter, 24 years old, community college dropout, survivor of loss and debt and impossible choices. Tomorrow would be different. Tomorrow the world would learn what happened when quiet resistance stopped being quiet. She checked the time. 11:47 p.m. 13 hours until Richard's meeting with Maxwell. 18 hours until coordinated arrests. Tomorrow night, it would be over. She set her phone down and finally let herself sleep, knowing that when she woke up, the final act would begin. Morning came too quickly. Lena woke to sunlight streaming through the curtains and the sound of Danny already awake, humming softly to himself in the kitchen. She checked her phone. 6:23 a.m. 3 messages waited. The first was from Daniel. Richard's meeting moved up to 8 a.m. He's nervous, good sign for us. The second from Rebecca. Arrest warrant signed, teams positioned. We move at 6 p.m. regardless of meeting outcome. The third from Vincent, time-stamped at 5:47 a.m. Whatever happens today, you've already changed everything. Thank you. She read that one twice, trying to reconcile the gratitude with the fact that she'd just been a waitress who refused to process a fraudulent bill. That somewhere between that refusal and this moment, she'd become central to dismantling a corporate conspiracy. Danny was arranging cereal boxes by height when she entered the kitchen. Not eating yet, just organizing. His anxiety response, when the world felt chaotic, he created order wherever he could control it. Morning, she said softly. He looked up, assessed her face with the careful attention he gave to Lego instruction manuals. You didn't sleep much. How can you tell? Your eyes look tired and you're holding your shoulders different, like you're carrying something heavy. He returned to the cereal boxes. Is today the day things change? The question stopped her. What do you mean? The security people, the safe room, the way you keep checking your phone. Something's happening. Today feels like the day it happens. He lined up the last box with geometric precision. I'm not scared. I just want to know. She sat down across from him. Yes. Today things change, but you're safe. I promise. I know, you've made a lot of layers. He finally opened a cereal box, began sorting the pieces by color before eating them. When it's over, will we still need the security people? For a little while. Then things will go back to normal. Better normal or same normal? The question cut deeper than he probably intended. Better, I think. I hope. He nodded, satisfied, and started eating the brown pieces first. His routine, his order, his way of managing a world that often moved too fast and too unpredictably. Lena made coffee and tried to eat toast that tasted like cardboard, mind already racing through the day ahead. At 7:15, her phone rang. Vincent. Richard just arrived at Maxwell Global Headquarters, he said. We have surveillance on the building. The meeting's happening in their executive conference room, 40th floor. Can you hear what they're saying? No. The room's too secure, but body language tells us plenty. Richard looks agitated. The Maxwell executives look concerned. Something's definitely wrong from their perspective. What do? We wait. Teams are in position. The moment Richard leaves that building, we'll have eyes on him. If he tries to run or starts destroying evidence, we move early. Otherwise, we stick to the 6 p.m. timeline. He paused. How are you holding up? I'm okay. You're a terrible liar. That's actually reassuring. Means you haven't adapted to this insanity yet. Despite everything, she almost smiled. What happens at 6? Coordinated arrests. Federal agents take Maxwell executives. NYPD takes Richard at his office. Detective Rivera's team picks up the other corrupted managers. It all happens simultaneously, so nobody gets a warning. Quick, clean, overwhelming. And me? You stay home with Danny. Security detail gets reinforced. Once arrests are confirmed, Rebecca will call you. After that, the evidence phase begins. Depositions, testimony preparation, building the prosecution's case. But that's weeks away. Today is just about ending the immediate threat. Lena looked at Danny, who is now eating the yellow pieces with methodical focus. What if something goes wrong? Then we adapt. But Lena, we have warrants, evidence, testimony from Hayes, communications records, financial documentation. This isn't a gamble. It's an execution. His voice hardened. These people spent months trying to destroy what I built. Threatened witnesses, corrupted employees, treated fraud like a game. Today they learn what happens when the game fights back. After the call ended, Lena sat with her coffee and tried to imagine what would happen at 6 p.m. Doors being kicked in, badges being shown, powerful people suddenly rendered powerless. Richard Castellanos, who'd orchestrated everything from behind the safety of corporate authority, facing handcuffs and Miranda rights. The day crawled forward. She helped Danny with his Sunday routine, laundry sorted by color, room cleaned according to the checklist on his wall, Lego projects organized by completion status. Normal tasks that felt surreal against the backdrop of conspiracy collapse happening across the city. At 9:47 a.m., Daniel texted. Richard left Maxwell, heading to his office, looking shaken. We're tracking. At 10:33, he's shredding documents, deleting files, going to make a call, standby. At 10:41, he just called someone, burner phone. Couldn't intercept, but we got the number. Tracing now. Lena watched the messages arrive, each one tightening the noose. Richard was panicking, which meant he knew something had shifted. Maybe Maxwell had cut him loose. Maybe they'd figured out Hayes was cooperating. Whatever the reason, he was trying to cover his tracks. At 11:16, her phone rang. Unknown number. She answered carefully. Lena Carter? A woman's voice, professional but urgent. Who is this? My name is Jennifer Rourke. I'm an investigative journalist with the Metro Herald. I'm working on a story about fraud allegations at D'Angelo Enterprises, and I understand you have information. Lena's blood went cold. I can't comment on that. I have sources indicating you reported fraudulent billing practices at the Sterling Room. That management was systematically overcharging customers. That you documented evidence and presented it to Vincent D'Angelo. Is that accurate? How did you get my number? I protect my sources. But this story is going public regardless of whether you cooperate. I'm offering you a chance to tell your side before it becomes someone else's narrative. Jennifer's tone shifted, became almost sympathetic. You exposed corruption. That takes courage. Don't you want people to know the truth? Every instinct screamed warning. I need to consult with legal counsel before making any statement. Of course, but I'm on deadline. The story runs tonight at 6 unless I hear from you by 4. Just consider it. This is your chance to control how you're portrayed. Whistleblower or disgruntled employee? Hero or troublemaker? You decide. The line went dead. Lena immediately called Vincent. He answered on the first ring. Jennifer Rourke just called me, she said. Metro Herald, asking about the fraud investigation. Silence. Then, Richard's escalating. He must have contacted media as insurance. If arrests happen, the story breaks. The narrative becomes about D'Angelo negligence instead of Maxwell conspiracy. She said the story runs at 6 p.m., same time as the arrests. That's not coincidence. He's trying to control the optics, turn it into a circus where we look incompetent, and he looks like a victim of corporate blame shifting. Vincent's voice turned sharp. Rebecca needs to know. I'll conference her in. A click. Then Rebecca's voice joined. I heard. This complicates things. Can we stop the story? Vincent asked. Not legally. First Amendment protections. If Rourke has sources and believes she has a legitimate story, she can publish. Rebecca paused. But we can get ahead of it. Release our own statement at 5:30, half hour before arrests. Control the narrative by being first. What kind of statement? The truth. D'Angelo Enterprises uncovered systematic fraud orchestrated by a senior executive in conspiracy with Maxwell Global. Multiple arrests pending, full cooperation with law enforcement, evidence of extensive criminal activity. We frame it as corporate responsibility, not negligence. That tips off Richard, Daniel's voice joined. Apparently Vincent had looped him in too. He'll run the moment the statement drops. Then we move the arrests up, Rebecca said. 5 p.m. instead of 6. Arrest Richard and Maxwell executives before the statement releases, before the Herald story runs. We compress the timeline. That gives us less than 6 hours, Vincent said. I'm aware. But if we wait, Richard controls the narrative and we spend months fighting perception battles. Better to act fast and clean. Rebecca's tone brooked no argument. I'm calling the teams now. Arrest at 5 p.m. sharp. Lena, you stay home and stay quiet. Do not respond to any media inquiries. Refer everything to Vincent's legal team. Understood. The call ended. Lena sat on her couch, phone in hand, while Danny built a Lego spaceship with focused intensity. Outside, security teams watched the building. Across the city, law enforcement positioned for arrests. In an office somewhere, Richard Castellanos destroyed evidence and made desperate calls, trying to control a situation that had already slipped beyond his grasp. And at the Metro Herald, Jennifer Rourke was writing a story that would either expose corruption or muddy the truth, depending on who shaped the narrative first. At 1:23 p.m., Daniel arrived at the apartment with equipment. We're streaming everything to a secure server, he explained while setting up additional cameras. When arrests happen, we want documentation. Video, audio, timestamps. Undeniable proof that everything went down legally and correctly. You think they'll claim misconduct? They'll claim anything that might work. Illegal search, coerced testimony, prosecutorial overreach. Defense attorneys are creative when their clients have money. He tested a camera angle. But if we have everything documented from multiple sources, their options narrow significantly. At 2:47, Vincent called. Rebecca got a judge to sign off on early execution of the warrants. Federal agents are briefing now. NYPD teams are moving into position. Everything happens at 5 p.m. exactly. What about the Herald story? Our statement releases at 5:15. By then, arrests will be in progress and the facts will be undeniable. Rourke can publish whatever she wants, but we'll have already established the timeline. He paused. How's Danny? She looked at her brother, who was explaining the structural integrity of his spaceship to a Lego minifigure. He's okay. Handling it better than I am, honestly. Kids are resilient. They adapt to what they're shown is normal. His voice softened. When this is over, I want you to take time off. Paid leave, however long you need. Process everything that's happened. Spend time with Danny. Don't rush into decisions about what comes next. I thought you said I'd be part of rebuilding. You will be, if that's what you want. But I'm not going to leverage your trauma into loyalty. You get to choose freely, without pressure or obligation. That matters to me. She didn't know what to say to that. In her experience, powerful people didn't offer choices. They made demands and called them opportunities. Thank you, she managed. At 3:15, Rebecca texted, Teams in final positions. Communication blackout until arrests begin. Stay alert. The waiting became physical, tension in her shoulders, tightness in her chest, every minute crawling past like hours. She tried to focus on Danny, on the castle they'd planned to build, but her mind kept jumping to Richard Castellanos in his office, to Maxwell executives in their corporate tower, to all the people who'd thought they were untouchable learning otherwise. At 4:47, her phone buzzed. Daniel. Go time in 13 minutes. Stay away from windows. Keep Danny in interior rooms. She moved Danny to the hallway, explaining that they were practicing safe room procedures. He accepted this without question, bringing his Lego spaceship and a flashlight, settling against the wall with the contentment of someone who trusted the structure around him. At 4:58, the city held its breath. At 5 p.m. exactly, the world exploded into motion. Lena's phone lit up with notifications. Daniel's team had tapped into law enforcement communications, was streaming everything in real time. She watched her screen as multiple operations unfolded simultaneously across the city. Federal agents entered Maxwell Global Headquarters, badges visible, moving with military precision toward the executive floor. Building security tried to intervene and was pushed aside by legal authority that couldn't be argued with. Elevator cameras showed agents ascending, weapons holstered but present, faces set in professional determination. At Richard Castellanos' office downtown, NYPD detectives walked through the front entrance of D'Angelo corporate headquarters with warrants in hand. Staff scattered, phones started ringing, someone shouted about calling lawyers. The detectives moved through it all like water through stone, and inevitable, unstoppable, already knowing where their target would be. At the Meridian Hotel, Anderson was pulled from a staff meeting mid-sentence. At Bellevue Bistro, Foster was arrested while reviewing dinner reservations. The coordinated sweep left no time for warnings, no opportunity for evidence destruction, no space for the conspiracy to regroup. Daniel sent video clips with minimal commentary. She watched Richard look up from his desk as Detective Rivera entered his office. Watched his face cycle through confusion, recognition, terror. Watched him stand, hands already rising in the universal gesture of surrender, mouth moving in words the camera couldn't capture but she could imagine. This is a mistake. I want my lawyer. You can't do this. But they could. They were. The warrants were legal, the evidence overwhelming, the authority absolute. At 5:07, Richard Castellanos was handcuffed in his own office, surrounded by the corporate power he'd tried to wield against Vincent. At 5:09, Maxwell Global's CEO and 3 senior executives were being escorted from their building by federal agents while news cameras captured every second. At 5:11, the coordinated arrests were complete, with all suspects in custody and evidence teams securing multiple locations. At 5:15, Vincent's statement hit every major media outlet simultaneously. Lena read it on her phone, watching the words reshape reality. D'Angelo Enterprises has cooperated fully with law enforcement in exposing systematic fraud orchestrated by a senior executive in conspiracy with Maxwell Global. Multiple arrests have been executed. We remain committed to integrity and transparency in all operations. Full statement and evidence available through our legal counsel. At 5:23, the Metro Herald published Jennifer Rourke's story. Lena forced herself to read it, expecting distortion, manipulation, the narrative Richard had tried to control. Instead, she found something closer to truth than she'd anticipated. Whistleblower exposes multi-million-dollar fraud scheme. A server at the Sterling Room documented months of fraudulent billing practices, leading to arrests of D'Angelo Enterprises executive Richard Castellanos and multiple Maxwell Global executives in what prosecutors are calling a sophisticated conspiracy to engineer a hostile corporate takeover through manufactured evidence of mismanagement. The story continued with details about the investigation, Hayes' cooperation, the coordinated fraud across properties. Rourke had clearly done actual journalism, had sources beyond just Richard's desperate attempt at narrative control. The piece portrayed Lena as exactly what she was, someone who'd noticed theft and refused to ignore it. At 5:31, her phone rang. Rebecca Walsh. "It's done," the ADA said. "All suspects in custody, evidence secured. No complications, no escapes, no destroyed materials we can't recover. Clean sweep." What happens now? Arraignment tomorrow, bail hearings, legal maneuvering. Maxwell's attorneys will fight everything, but we have communications records showing direct conspiracy. Richard's already asking about deals, wants to testify against Maxwell in exchange for reduced charges. Same play Hayes made, one level higher. And you'll take it? Probably. Getting Maxwell executives convicted matters more than maximizing Richard's sentence. Justice is messy, Lena. We do what works, not what's satisfying. Rebecca paused. You should know, your name is in the Herald article. They're calling you the whistleblower. That's going to bring attention. What kind of attention? Media requests, probably. Maybe some harassment from Maxwell supporters, though our protective order should limit that. Vincent's legal team will help you navigate it. But your invisibility? That's over. You're public now. After the call ended, Lena sat with that reality. No more being overlooked, dismissed, ignored. She'd drawn a line and the world had noticed. For better or worse, Lena Carter was no longer a waitress who documented fraud in secret. She was the person who'd brought down a conspiracy. Danny emerged from the hallway, spaceship in hand. Is it over? Yeah, it's over. Did the bad people get caught? They did. He nodded, processing this information with the same careful attention he gave to Lego instructions. Good. That's what should happen when people break rules, consequences. He sat beside her. Can we build the castle now? She almost laughed. Would have, if emotions weren't tangled too tightly in her chest. Yes. Let's build the castle. They spread Lego pieces across the coffee table while news alerts continued flooding Lena's phone. Videos of Richard Castellanos being led from his office in handcuffs. Photos of Maxwell executives covering their faces from cameras. Headlines screaming about corporate conspiracy, hostile takeovers, whistleblower courage. Her phone buzzed with a call from an unknown number, then another, then 3 more in rapid succession. Media requests, probably, trying to get her story. She silenced the ringer and focused on helping Danny build castle walls, one gray brick at a time. At 6:47, Vincent called. Are you watching the news? I'm building a castle with my brother. Smart choice. The news is chaos. Maxwell's stock is plummeting. Shareholders are demanding investigations. 3 board members just resigned. It's beautiful. Beautiful? They tried to destroy my company using fraud and manipulation. Now they're imploding from exposure. Yes, that's beautiful. His tone shifted. How are you really doing? I don't know yet. Ask me tomorrow. Fair enough. I'm sending a car for you at 9 a.m. Rebecca wants to brief you on testimony procedures, and we need to discuss your role going forward. But tonight, you rest. You've earned it. At 7:15, Maria called. Oh my God, Lena, I just saw the news. You took down Richard Castellanos. You're like a superhero. I'm really not. Are you kidding? You exposed a massive conspiracy. The Herald called you a whistleblower. This is incredible. It's complicated, Maria. I bet. But listen, everyone at the Sterling Room is talking about how you noticed what nobody else did, how you stood up to Dominic, how you documented everything. People are saying they should have paid more attention, should have noticed things weren't right. You made us all realize we'd been looking away. The words hit harder than intended. I just didn't want to be complicit. Most people choose complicit. It's easier, safer. You chose different, and look what happened. Actual change. Actual consequences for powerful people who thought they were untouchable. Maria's voice caught. I'm proud to know you. Everyone is. After that call came others. Stephanie from the bar, Miguel from the kitchen. Even Tony, who usually kept to himself, sent a text. You're braver than anyone I've ever met. Thank you for giving a damn. The support felt overwhelming and insufficient at once. They were praising her courage, but she'd just been angry. Tired of watching theft, tired of silence, tired of pretending normalcy while systems rotted underneath. At 8:30, Danny's bedtime routine began. She helped him organize his Lego projects, checked the safe room one final time, read him a chapter from the science fiction novel he was working through. He fell asleep quickly, exhausted from the emotional weight of a day spent waiting for consequences to arrive. Lena stood in his doorway, watching him sleep, thinking about all the ways this could have gone wrong. If Vincent hadn't stepped in that first night, if Hayes hadn't broken under pressure, if Richard had been smarter about evidence destruction, if Maxwell's lawyers had been faster, if any one of 100 variables had shifted, she and Danny might be in protective custody right now, or worse. But they weren't. They were home, safe, surrounded by security, but alive and whole. At 9:47, she received an email from Jennifer Rourke at the Metro Herald. Ms. Carter, I wanted to reach out directly. My article tonight focused on the arrests and conspiracy, but I'm working on a follow-up about the human element, what it costs to expose corruption, what happens to whistleblowers after the headlines fade. I'd like to interview you, if you're willing. No pressure, no agenda beyond truth. Just an opportunity to tell your story in your own words. My number is below if you're interested. Lena read it 3 times. Part of her wanted to ignore it, stay invisible, despite Rebecca's warning that invisibility was over. But another part, the part that had spent 3 months documenting fraud because silence felt like poison, recognized an opportunity. Not tonight, though. Tonight she was too tired, too wrung out, too uncertain about what came next. She responded simply, "Thank you for the article. I'll consider the interview and be in touch." At 10:15, Vincent sent a final text. "Sleep well. Tomorrow we start rebuilding. You're part of that, however you choose to be." She turned off her phone and sat in the quiet apartment, letting the day's enormity settle into something she could carry. Arrests had happened. Justice was in motion. The conspiracy had collapsed under the weight of its own corruption and one person's refusal to participate. Tomorrow would bring testimony preparation, media management, decisions about her future. Tomorrow would reshape her life in ways she couldn't yet imagine. But tonight, she was just Lena Carter, 24 years old, sister to Danny, former invisible waitress, current witness to corporate conspiracy. Future uncertain, but finally her own to define. She made tea she didn't drink and sat by the window watching security teams patrol outside, watching the city lights spread below, watching the world continue spinning despite everything that had changed in 5 days. 5 days ago, she'd refused to process a fraudulent bill. 4 days ago, she'd confronted her manager and met Vincent D'Angelo. 3 days ago, she'd agreed to be bait in a conspiracy investigation. 2 days ago, she'd been threatened and decided to fight anyway. 1 day ago, she'd waited for arrests while installing panic rooms. Tonight, the powerful had fallen and she was still standing. Tomorrow, she'd figure out what came next. She finished her tea, checked the locks one final time, and went to bed. Sleep came slowly, filtered through adrenaline crash and emotional exhaustion. But when it arrived, it brought dreams of castles with working drawbridges, defensive depth that actually protected, and walls built strong enough to keep the darkness outside. In the morning, she'd wake to a world that knew her name, a world where her documentation had become evidence, her courage had become headlines, her quiet resistance had become undeniable change. But for now, she slept. And somewhere in the city, in holding cells and law offices and newsrooms, the machinery of justice ground forward, slow, imperfect, but moving toward accountability. Because one person had said no. Because one person had documented the truth. Because one person had refused to let theft be called anything else. And that, it turned out, was enough to change everything. The morning came with unexpected silence. No urgent calls, no crisis texts, no security alerts disrupting the fragile peace. Lena woke at 7:23 to sunlight and the distant sound of Danny humming in his room, his happy sound, the one that meant his world felt stable enough to sing in. She checked her phone. 17 missed calls from unknown numbers, 43 unread emails, and one message from Vincent timestamped at 6:04 a.m. Car arrives at 9. Bring the notebook. Today, we finish this properly. The notebook sat on her nightstand where she'd placed it after the first meeting with Vincent. 73 pages that had started as confusion and become evidence. She picked it up, felt the weight of spiral-bound paper and ink, and realized she was holding the artifact that had changed everything. Danny appeared in her doorway, already dressed, hair combed with the precise part he preferred. "The news says you're a hero. You watch the news?" Mrs. Z. Chen turned it on while making breakfast. "They showed your picture, said you exposed corruption." He tilted his head, processing. "Are you different now?" The question cut to something essential. "Do I seem different?" "No, you're still you. Same face, same voice, same way you organize the kitchen." He paused. "But the world sees you different. That's going to change things." "Yeah, it is." "Will you still have time for Lego?" "Always. That's not negotiable." He smiled, quick and genuine, then returned to his room. Lena stood in the hallway, struck by the realization that Danny had just articulated what she'd been struggling with. She wasn't different. The same person who'd refused a fraudulent charge was the same person making coffee in a small apartment, worrying about her brother, trying to build a life from impossible circumstances. But the world's perception had shifted, and perception shaped reality in ways she was only beginning to understand. At 8:47, she was ready. Professional clothes, the Target suit again, but she'd pressed it carefully, paired it with the one good blouse she owned. Hair pulled back, minimal makeup, the notebook in a folder under her arm. She looked like someone prepared for important meetings, even if inside she felt like a waitress playing dress-up. The car arrived exactly at 9. Not Daniel this time, but a professional driver who opened the door without comment and drove with the smooth competence of someone accustomed to transporting important people. Lena watched the city pass outside tinted windows, thinking about the last time she'd ridden a bus through these streets. 5 days ago? Invisible and struggling. Just another face in the crowd. The D'Angelo Tower lobby was different on a Monday morning, bustling with executives and assistants, everyone moving with purpose and expensive coffee. Lena felt their eyes track her as she crossed to the elevators. Recognition, curiosity, assessment. The whistleblower. The server who'd brought down Richard Castellanos. The woman from the news. She kept her head up and her expression neutral, lessons learned from 18 months of serving customers who looked through her. Visibility was just another performance. She could learn this role too. Vincent's office was crowded. Rebecca Walsh sat at the conference table with stacks of legal documents. Margaret reviewed something on her laptop with the focused intensity of someone building an impenetrable case. Chen had spreadsheets open, cross-referencing data. Daniel stood by the window with his eternal laptop, monitoring something Lena couldn't see. And Vincent stood when she entered, gesture simple but weighted with respect. "Thank you for coming." "You said to bring the notebook." "I did. But first, you should know what happened overnight." He gestured to Rebecca. "Counselor?" Rebecca stood, all business. "Richard Castellanos officially agreed to full cooperation at 2 a.m. He's giving us everything. Communications with Maxwell executives, financial records, names of every person involved in the conspiracy. In exchange, he gets reduced charges and a recommendation for minimum sentencing." "How minimal?" Lena asked. 5 to 7 years, possibly less with good behavior. He'll lose his career, his reputation, his professional licenses. But yes, he avoids the 25 years he was facing. Rebecca's expression hardened. "I know that's not satisfying, but his testimony gives us Maxwell Global's CEO, their CFO, and 3 senior VPs on racketeering charges. Those convictions matter more." "What about the other managers? Anderson and Foster?" "Also cooperating. They were tools, like Hayes." Useful for testimony, less important for punishment. They'll face fraud charges, probably serve 2 to 3 years each. Rebecca pulled out a document. Which brings us to you. The prosecution wants your testimony in multiple proceedings: grand jury, preliminary hearings, eventual trials. You'll be questioned about your documentation, your observations, your interactions with Hayes. Defense attorneys will try to discredit you, suggest you had ulterior motives or misunderstood what you witnessed. I documented facts. Dates, amounts, discrepancies. Facts don't have motives. Exactly. Which is why you're going to be an excellent witness. Rebecca slid the document across the table. This is a formal cooperation agreement. It outlines your obligations, guarantees your protection, and specifies the compensation you'll receive for your time in testimony. Lena scanned the document. Dense legal language about depositions and subpoenas and witness preparation, and at the bottom, a figure that made her breath catch: $50,000 for cooperation and testimony, plus all legal expenses covered. That's too much, she said. It's standard, Rebecca countered. You're providing essential testimony in a complex white-collar case. Your time has value. The state recognizes that. Vincent leaned forward. The money's not charity, Lena. It's compensation for the fact that you'll spend months giving testimony, facing cross-examination, having your life dissected by defense attorneys trying to find any angle to undermine your credibility. You deserve to be paid for that. She looked at the number again, $50,000. Danny's therapy covered for 2 years, debt paid off. Breathing room she hadn't had since her mother's diagnosis. Where do I sign? After the legal documents were complete, Margaret took over. We need to discuss your security situation. Maxwell Global has significant resources and connections. While the leadership is under indictment, the company itself still operates. There may be individuals loyal to the arrested executives who view you as a threat. For how long? Until trials conclude and sentencing happens. Could be 6 months, could be a year. We're recommending continued security detail, though less intensive than the past week. 1 person instead of 2, daytime coverage primarily, with enhanced building security as backup. What about Danny's school? We've coordinated with the principal. Additional security during drop-off and pickup, vetted volunteers only for any after-school activities. Nothing that will make him feel unsafe, just precautions. Margaret's expression softened slightly. I have a nephew with autism. I understand routine disruption isn't trivial. We're trying to maintain normalcy while ensuring safety. Thank you. Chen spoke up next, turning his laptop around. I've been analyzing the full scope of the fraud. With Richard's cooperation, we've identified over 300 affected customers across 4 properties spanning 18 months. Total fraudulent charges exceed $180,000. The number hit like a physical blow. $180,000? Small amounts across many transactions. Most customers never noticed. $20 here, $50 there. Individually meaningless, collectively massive. Chen highlighted sections of his spreadsheet. D'Angelo Enterprises is offering full restitution to every affected customer, plus additional compensation for the violation of trust. We're also implementing new oversight systems, third-party auditing, customer verification processes, manager accountability structures, making sure this can't happen again. That's expensive, Lena said. Cheaper than losing customer trust, Vincent replied. This fraud happened on my watch, in my establishments. I'm responsible for fixing it, regardless of who orchestrated it. He stood, walked to the window overlooking the city. Richard Castellanos exploited systems I built, used access I granted him, corrupted employees I hired. That's on me. The solution is also on me. You couldn't have known. I should have. That's what leadership means. Creating structures strong enough to resist corruption even when I'm not watching. He turned back to face her. Which is why I'm restructuring the entire operation. New management framework, new accountability systems, new culture that rewards integrity over efficiency. And I want you to help build it. The room went quiet. What? Lena said. Vincent returned to his seat, leaned forward with complete focus. I'm creating a new position, Director of Operational Integrity. Someone who oversees quality control, audits procedures, ensures that what happened with Richard can't happen again. Someone who understands the ground-level reality of how these businesses operate. Someone who proved they'll stand up to corruption even when it costs them everything. You want me to take a corporate position? I want you to take a leadership position. Yes, it's corporate, but it's also essential. You'd have authority across all properties, direct line to me, resources to investigate concerns and implement solutions. Starting salary is $95,000, full benefits, professional development budget. He paused. But I meant what I said before. This is an offer, not an obligation. You can say no. You can go back to serving tables if that's what you want. You can do something completely different. Your testimony and cooperation have earned you freedom to choose. Lena looked at the faces around the table. Rebecca, who'd weaponized law to protect justice. Margaret, who'd built cases with ruthless precision. Chen, who'd turned numbers into narratives. Daniel, who'd tracked conspiracies through digital breadcrumbs. Vincent, who'd stopped a manager from dragging a waitress into a dark hallway and then mobilized an empire to protect her. Can I think about it? She asked. Take all the time you need. At 11:30, the meeting broke. Rebecca left for court. Margaret returned to building prosecution files. Chen dove back into forensic accounting. Daniel headed out to check security systems. Vincent walked Lena to the elevator. I know it's overwhelming, he said, going from server to director. But you already do the work. You observe, document, analyze, stand up for what's right. I'm just offering you the authority and resources to do it systematically instead of secretly. What if I'm not qualified? You exposed a conspiracy that 17 executives missed. You documented evidence under impossible conditions. You confronted corruption despite having everything to lose. Those are the qualifications that matter. The elevator arrived. Think about it. Talk to Danny. Figure out what you want your life to look like. Whatever you decide, you have my support. She rode down alone, mind spinning through possibilities. Director of Operational Integrity, a title that meant something. Salary that meant security. Work that meant purpose beyond survival. But also visibility. Permanence. Commitment to a world she'd only just started understanding. The driver took her home through midday traffic. When she arrived, Mrs. Chen was waiting with concerned eyes and freshly baked cookies. I saw the news, the older woman said. Are you all right? I think so. Still processing. Danny's at school. I'll pick him up at 3 like usual. You rest. She squeezed Lena's hand. Your mother would be so proud. I hope you know that. After Mrs. Chen left, Lena sat in the quiet apartment and finally let herself feel everything she'd been holding back. The fear of the past week. The anger at people who'd treated fraud like a game. The exhaustion of constant vigilance. The relief that it was over. The uncertainty about what came next. She cried for the first time since her mother's funeral. Not delicate tears, but full-body sobs that shook her shoulders and made breathing difficult. Cried for the girl she'd been, struggling through community college with dreams of accounting careers. Cried for the woman she'd become, invisible and surviving. Cried for the future she'd never imagined, where her courage had value and her choices had weight. When the tears stopped, she felt emptied and somehow clearer. She made coffee, pulled out her laptop, and did something she hadn't done in 2 years. She researched. Not bills or schedules or how to maximize tips. She researched operational integrity, corporate oversight, quality control frameworks. Read articles about whistleblower protection, organizational ethics, accountability structures. By the time Danny came home at 3:15, she'd filled 7 pages of notes with questions and ideas and frameworks that could prevent what Richard had done. Not just in Vincent's company, but anywhere corruption tried to take root. How was school? She asked as Danny organized his backpack with systematic precision. Normal. A kid asked if you were the lady on the news. I said yes. He said that was cool. Danny hung his jacket on the exact hook he always used. Are you famous now? More like temporarily notable. What's the difference? Famous means people remember you. Notable means they notice you for a while, then move on to the next thing. He considered this. Which do you want to be? The question stopped her. I don't know. What do you think? I think you should be whatever lets us still have Lego time. He pulled out a bag of new bricks. I got these from the school trade. Want to build something? They built until dinner, until homework, until Danny's bedtime routine. And after he was asleep, Lena pulled out her phone and made a call. Jennifer Rourke, Metro Herald. This is Lena Carter. You wanted an interview. There was a pause, then careful professionalism. I did. Are you offering one? On my terms, no photos, no personal details about my brother, no speculation about my future plans. I'll tell you about the documentation, the fraud, why I came forward. That's it. When? Tomorrow, 2 p.m. There's a coffee shop 3 blocks from my apartment. I'll text you the address. I'll be there. And Lena? Thank you. This story matters. After hanging up, she texted Vincent. I want to take the position, but I have conditions. His response came immediately. Name them. She typed carefully. Flexible schedule for Danny's needs, remote work option when necessary, authority to hire my own team, and I want an annual audit by an independent third party to verify I'm actually effective, not just symbolic. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Then, done. All of it. Welcome to leadership, Director Carter. She stared at the title. Director Carter. Not server, not waitress, not the invisible girl who documented fraud in bathroom breaks. Director. Leader. Someone who built systems instead of surviving them. The next morning, she met Jennifer Rourke at a quiet coffee shop with worn wooden tables and excellent espresso. The journalist was younger than her voice suggested, maybe 30, with sharp eyes and a recorder she placed on the table with permission. Tell me why you started documenting the fraud, Jennifer said. Lena wrapped her hands around her coffee mug. Because the numbers didn't match and nobody else seemed to care. Because I'd spent 2 years watching systems fail people. Healthcare that wouldn't cover my mother's treatment, insurance that didn't help my brother, jobs that paid just enough to keep you desperate, but not enough to get ahead. I was tired of systems that protected the wrong people. So this was political? It was personal. There's nothing political about refusing to steal from customers. That's just basic ethics. Jennifer made notes. The Herald received calls from D'Angelo's competitors suggesting you were planted by Vincent to manufacture a crisis he could solve publicly. How do you respond? I respond by pointing to 18 months of employment records showing I was hired before Vincent even knew fraud was happening. I respond with documentation time-stamped and verified by multiple sources. I respond with the fact that I nearly lost everything to expose the truth. Lena leaned forward. People with power hate admitting they were beaten by someone they considered powerless, so they invent narratives where the powerless person was actually a pawn. It's easier than admitting a waitress noticed what they missed. Do you consider yourself powerless? I considered myself invisible. That's different. Invisible people see everything because nobody thinks to hide from them. The interview lasted 90 minutes. Jennifer asked about the notebook, the confrontation with Hayes, the decision to continue working despite threats. Lena answered carefully, aware that her words would shape how the story was understood. She wasn't a hero, just someone who'd gotten tired of being complicit. She wasn't brave, just stubborn about lines she wouldn't cross. When it was over, Jennifer closed her notebook with careful precision. One more question, off the record. What do you want people to take away from this? Lena thought about Danny building castles with defensive depth, about her mother saying silence was poison, about Vincent stopping a manager's hand from dragging her somewhere dark. I want people to understand that the systems we think are solid are only as strong as the people who maintain them, that corruption doesn't require evil masterminds, just enough good people looking away, that changing things doesn't require superpowers, just paying attention and refusing to participate. She paused. And I want other people in my position, the invisible ones, the ones working multiple jobs and raising kids and barely surviving, to know they're not powerless. They're just convinced they are. Those are different things. The article ran the next day under the headline, "The Notebook That Brought Down a Conspiracy, Inside the Mind of a Whistleblower." It was fair, factual, and framed Lena exactly as she'd wanted, not as a hero, but as someone who'd made a choice and followed through. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Messages from other service workers who'd noticed irregularities at their jobs. Questions from journalists about systemic fraud in the hospitality industry. Interview requests from podcasts and blogs and news programs. Vincent's legal team helped filter the noise, but Lena accepted select opportunities. A podcast about corporate ethics. A panel discussion at a business school about accountability. An interview with a labor advocacy group about worker protections. She wasn't trying to be famous. She was trying to make the choice she'd made easier for the next person facing it, 3 weeks after the arrest, the grand jury returned indictments against Maxwell Global's CEO and 4 senior executives on charges of conspiracy, fraud, and racketeering. Richard Castellanos testified for 6 hours, detailing the entire scheme with methodical precision. Hayes provided corroborating testimony. The evidence was overwhelming. 2 months after the arrest, Lena gave her first deposition. Defense attorneys tried to suggest she'd misunderstood the billing irregularities, that she'd been manipulated by Vincent, that her documentation was unreliable. She sat across from them with her notebook and calmly walked through each entry: date, table number, original amount, altered amount. 73 pages of irrefutable facts that defense strategies couldn't touch. "You seem very certain about these numbers," one attorney said, with implied skepticism. "I was studying accounting before I had to drop out. I understand numbers. These are correct." "But you admit you dropped out? That you don't have formal credentials?" "I admit I chose to support my disabled brother instead of finishing college. That doesn't make me incompetent. It makes me someone who understands priority." The attorney moved on. 4 months after the arrest, the Sterling Room reopened under new management with new systems and new culture. Lena attended the soft opening, walking through familiar spaces transformed. The tables were the same, but everything else had changed. Open kitchen design for transparency, digital ordering systems that customers could verify in real time, manager rotations that prevented consolidation of power. Maria grabbed her in a hug the moment she arrived. "Director Carter, look at you." "I'm still just Lena." "You're the woman who changed everything. Own it." Maria pulled her toward the kitchen. "Miguel wants to see you." The chef had tears in his eyes when Lena entered. "I should have said something. All those months, I saw the irregularities on orders, the discrepancies between what we cooked and what got billed. I looked away because it wasn't my problem. I'm sorry." "You didn't know what you were seeing," Lena said gently. "I barely knew. We all do the best we can with what we understand." "You did better than best. You did right." He wiped his eyes. "The new systems, the transparency, the checks and balances, this is how it should have always been. Thank you for making us better." Vincent found her later, standing by table 12 where everything had started. "Thinking about that night?" "Thinking about how one fraudulent charge changed everything. If I'd processed it, if I'd looked away, if I'd decided it wasn't worth fighting, Richard would still be stealing, Maxwell would still be plotting, Hayes would still be altering bills, and you'd still be invisible." "Yeah." She turned to face him. "Is that what you're building with the new systems? Ways to make sure people don't have to choose between visibility and complicity?" "That's exactly what I'm building, with your help." He handed her a folder. "Initial draft of the Operational Integrity Framework. I want your feedback before we implement across all properties." She flipped through it. Protocols for reporting concerns. Protection for employees who raised flags. Third-party verification systems. Transparent accountability at every level. It was comprehensive, thoughtful, and would be expensive to maintain. "This is good," she said. "Really good." "It's a start. Culture change takes time, but we're committed." He paused. "How's Danny handling everything?" "Better than I am, honestly. He likes structure and clear rules. The new security protocols make sense to him. He's even designed a Lego model of proper defensive systems." She smiled. "He wanted to give it to you as a thank you for keeping us safe." "I'd be honored to receive it." 6 months after the arrest, the trials began. Lena testified in 3 separate proceedings, spending hours on the witness stand being questioned by prosecutors and challenged by defense attorneys. She wore her best clothes, spoke clearly, and never wavered from the facts. The notebook sat in front of her, evidence that couldn't be argued with. The Maxwell Global CEO got 18 years. The CFO got 15. The senior VPs got between 8 and 12 years each. Richard Castellanos got 6 years with possibility of parole after 4. Hayes got 3 years. Anderson and Foster got 2 years each. None of it felt like enough, but Rebecca was right. Justice was messy. They'd gotten convictions, exposed the conspiracy, and created precedent for prosecuting corporate fraud. That mattered even if the sentences felt inadequate. 8 months after the arrests, Lena appeared on a panel at a national conference about corporate ethics. She sat beside Rebecca, Margaret, and a law professor, discussing accountability frameworks and whistleblower protections. The audience was packed: executives, lawyers, students, journalists. What would you say to someone who notices irregularities at their workplace? A student asked. How do they know when to speak up? Lena thought carefully. You speak up when staying silent makes you complicit in something you can't live with. Not everyone has that line in the same place. Some people can ignore small thefts. I couldn't. You have to know yourself well enough to recognize when you're drinking poison and calling it survival. But what if speaking up cost you everything? It might. It almost did for me. But staying silent costs too. It just costs slower, in pieces of yourself you don't notice missing until there's nothing left. She paused. I'm not saying everyone should be a whistleblower. I'm saying everyone should know what they stand for, what they won't participate in, and what price they're willing to pay for integrity. Those are personal calculations. Nobody can make them for you. 1 year after refusing to process a fraudulent charge, Lena Carter stood in the D'Angelo Tower's 40th floor conference room with her team. 3 analysts she'd hired personally, experts in quality control and operational oversight. They'd spent the past 6 months implementing new systems across all D'Angelo properties, training staff, building culture. The results were remarkable. Customer complaints down 60%. Employee satisfaction up 45%. Third-party audits showing 0 irregularities across the board. The framework was working. We're expanding, Vincent announced at the quarterly meeting. 4 new properties in the next 18 months. Hotels, restaurants, a conference center, and every one of them will be built on the systems you've created, Lena. Transparency, accountability, integrity from the ground up. After the meeting, she stood by the window looking out at the city. Somewhere down there, people were working invisible jobs, noticing things that seemed wrong, wondering if speaking up was worth the risk. She hoped her story reached some of them, hoped it made the choice feel less impossible. Her phone buzzed. Danny, texting from Mrs. Chen's apartment where he stayed after school on meeting days. Did you remember Lego time? She smiled and texted back. On my way home now. Castle or spaceship? Castle. With better defensive walls than last time. I have new ideas. Lena gathered her things and headed for the elevator. Director of Operational Integrity was important, but it wasn't everything. Danny's Lego time mattered more. The balance between work and life, between changing systems and maintaining the relationships that gave those systems meaning. When she got home, Danny had already spread Lego pieces across the living room floor. He'd designed an entire defensive system, layered walls, strategic towers, a moat with working drawbridge. This is incredible, Lena said, examining the blueprint he'd sketched. It's based on what worked for us. Multiple layers, clear escape routes, communication systems. Protection without isolation. He started building. That's what good defense is, not hiding, just making sure the bad things can't reach the important parts. They built for 2 hours, brick by careful brick. Outside, the security detail had been reduced to periodic check-ins, the immediate danger long past, life returning to something like normal. Inside, they constructed walls and towers and bridges, building something that would stand against imaginary threats. When the castle was finished, Danny placed Lego minifigures inside the walls. A small figure with brown hair, representing Lena. A slightly taller one, Danny. Others representing Mrs. Chen, Vincent, the people who'd helped them. Everyone who matters is protected, Danny said with satisfaction. That's how it should be. Yeah, Lena agreed softly. That's exactly how it should be. That night, after Danny was asleep, she sat at the kitchen table with her laptop and did something she'd been putting off for months. She opened a new document and started writing. Not a report or a framework or a professional document. A story. The story of a waitress who noticed theft and decided silence was poison. Who documented fraud in a spiral notebook and confronted her manager despite having everything to lose. Who drew a line and found people willing to defend it. She wrote for hours, finding words for emotions she'd been too busy surviving to process. The fear and anger and determination. The moments of doubt. The decision to keep going anyway. The realization that powerlessness was often just a story people told themselves because changing the story seemed impossible. She wrote until the words ran out, then saved the document and closed her laptop. Maybe someone would read it someday. Maybe it would help someone else facing similar choices. Maybe it would just be a record for Danny when he was older, proof that his sister had chosen integrity when survival seemed easier. Either way, it was finished. The story had an ending now. 2 years after the arrests, on a Saturday afternoon, Lena walked into the Sterling room as a customer for the first time. She'd made a reservation under her own name, brought Danny along, requested table 12. The server who approached was young, nervous, clearly trying to place why Lena looked familiar. "Welcome to the Sterling room. My name is Andrea, and I'll be taking care of you today." "Thank you, Andrea-san." Lena smiled. "What would you recommend?" They ordered. The food was excellent. The service was professional. When the check arrived, Lena examined it carefully, compared it to what they'd ordered, verified every charge, checked the math. Everything was correct. She paid with cash, left a generous tip, and stood to leave. Andrea caught her at the door. "You're her, aren't you? Lena Carter, the woman who exposed Richard Castellanos." "I am. I just started here 3 months ago. During training, they told us your story, about how you noticed fraud, documented everything, stood up even when it was dangerous." Andrea's eyes were bright with something that looked like hope. "They said that's the standard now, that this company values people who care enough to fight for what's right." "Do you believe them?" "I do, because you proved it was possible. You showed that speaking up can actually matter." She paused. "Thank you for making it safer for the rest of us." Lena squeezed her hand. "Thank you for paying attention. That's how it starts. Someone noticing, someone caring, someone refusing to look away. The system only works if we all protect it." Outside, the city moved on. People rushed past with their own stories, their own struggles, their own moments of decision approaching. Somewhere, someone was noticing something wrong and wondering if speaking up was worth the risk. Somewhere, a manager was inflating a bill and assuming nobody would care. Somewhere, a person in power was underestimating someone they dismissed as invisible. And somewhere, that invisible person was taking notes, building evidence, preparing to draw a line. Lena took Danny's hand and walked home through streets that no longer felt threatening. She'd been afraid once of losing her job, of failing her brother, of facing consequences she couldn't control. But she'd spoken anyway, drawn the line anyway, refused to be complicit anyway. And the world had changed. Not perfectly, not completely. Justice had been messy and incomplete and frustrating. Some people had faced consequences while others had negotiated lighter sentences. The systems she'd helped build weren't flawless and never would be, but they were better, measurably, demonstrably better. And that progress had started with one word: theft, with a waitress who'd said no, with a spiral notebook and 73 pages of careful documentation, with the quiet resistance that became undeniable change. At home, Danny built a final addition to the castle, a tall tower with a flag on top. He'd designed the flag himself, a simple symbol in black and white Lego blocks. "What does it mean?" Lena asked. "It means the castle stands. It means the defensive walls worked. It means we protected what mattered." He placed a minifigure at the base of the tower, looking up. "It means we won." She pulled him into a hug, thinking about all the ways winning looked different than she'd imagined. Not triumph, not glory, not rewards that erase the cost. Just survival with integrity intact. Just progress built brick by careful brick. Just a life where speaking truth didn't require destroying yourself. That was enough. More than enough. It was everything. Outside, the security detail had been discontinued 2 months ago. The threats had faded. The trials had concluded. The story had moved from headlines to archives, making room for newer scandals and fresher outrage. But the changes remained. The systems held. The culture Vincent had built with her help had taken root. Transparency as default, accountability as standard, integrity as non-negotiable foundation. And Lena Carter, who'd been invisible for so long, had learned that visibility wasn't the same as vulnerability, that being seen meant having impact, that her voice, her choices, her refusal to participate in theft had reshaped more than just one company. She'd reshaped herself. From survivor to fighter, from invisible to influential, from waitress documenting fraud in secret to director building systems that prevented it. The journey had cost her sleep and safety and the simplicity of a life lived small, but it had given her purpose, dignity, and proof that one person paying attention could change everything. She made dinner while Danny finished the castle. They ate together, talked about his day, planned next weekend's Lego project. The ordinary rhythms of a life no longer defined by desperation. Later, after Danny was asleep, Lena stood by the window looking out at the city lights. Somewhere in that sprawl of glass and steel and human ambition, Vincent D'Angelo was probably still working, still building, still fighting to prove that business could be profitable without being predatory. Somewhere, Rebecca Walsh was preparing another case. Margaret was building another legal strategy. Chen was analyzing another spreadsheet for patterns of fraud. Somewhere, people she had never met were making choices about what they'd tolerate, what they'd expose, what lines they'd defend. And somewhere, in a quiet apartment with Lego castles and security that had become unnecessary, a 26-year-old woman who'd once been too afraid to speak had learned that courage wasn't the absence of fear. It was just the refusal to let fear make the decisions. She turned off the lights and went to bed, knowing that tomorrow would bring new challenges, new systems to build, new people to train in the framework of integrity she'd helped create. But tonight, she could rest. She'd done what her mother had asked. She hadn't let them make her small, hadn't shrunk to fit their comfort, hadn't drunk the poison of silence until it killed what mattered. She'd drawn a line, and the line had held. And that, in the end, was all that mattered. The story of Lena Carter, the waitress who said theft and meant it, who documented corruption in a spiral notebook, who refused to be complicit even when complicity seemed safer, was finished. But the impact of that story continued, in every employee who noticed irregularities and spoke up, in every manager who chose transparency over convenience, in every system built on the principle that integrity wasn't negotiable, in every invisible person who learned they were only powerless if they believed the story. The line had been drawn, and it would hold. As long as people like Lena kept defending it, one word, one choice, one refusal at a time.